Hi, this is Naroki5. I am going to be doing this until I die or I find something better to do. So please help me achieve this personal and, I think, noble objective by contributing to my Patreon or Subscribe Star. Link is down below. Every little bit helps. Thank you very much.
Bada bam. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Red Pill Nation Hangout number 402. I am your host and somewhat sane. Maybe people might argue that I'm actually quite insane, but your host for the Red Pill Nation Hangout. I've been doing this now for 402 episodes. I'm absolutely somewhat amazed that I've lasted this long. I covered what 400 meant when I did episode 400 with Rearson. By the way, Rearson is only going to be dropping in every once in a while. The aliens are only letting him out to play now, because they got lots of them now, and they all have gimp suits that they got to try out. So it's what it is what it is with him now. With me tonight are I've got some of the usual suspects tonight, but we'll start out with a guy who's been appearing on a somewhat regular basis. So Roger, you introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Roger Hansen. I usually come on Skype, and I've been going on Discord too for quite a long time. You can find me at Live with Roger Hansen on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, all the usual places. I'm also known as Infamous. I have a channel on YouTube and Rumble as well as Odyssey called Gaming with Infamous. I'm on Minds.com as well as X as well as Roger_Hansen for Minds.com and just Roger Hansen or Infamous OG1973 on X. Either of the two. I've got two accounts. So that's about it.
Okay, Henrik. We'll go with Henrik and not the actual name you've got here. So we'll try to remember to call you Henrik. So Henrik, introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you very kindly. Yes, I haven't gotten a whole Skype company account in that, and it's a lot easier to just go by your regular alias because, God forbid, you violate the Fifis, you're in Chicago. Yeah. Henrik Thorntonson, Henrik Burnside. Also knows the postal dude for everyone else that sees me every time I go to a concert and I'm not working myself to death with a forklift.
Particularly the beautiful, bald-headed, blue-bearded
monstrosities.
Keyboardist.
Yeah. Sorry I've been away for so long, guys. It's been very difficult trying to dodge the gunshots and actually get oneself together without needing Kevlar, because God forbid you have Kevlar in this city. So yeah, I'm glad to be back. I'm here, I'm crazy, I'm wild. Freedom first, baby!
And of course, all the way from the Emerald Isle. Although I don't know how much emerald is left in the Emerald Isle, or maybe that's Ireland that I'm talking about. I just keep thinking of all of the British Isles as the Emerald Isles. But Mark, introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's Ireland, the Emerald Isle. I'm in actual mainline England. I'm Mark Edworthy. I'm mainly on Minds.com, so Minds.com/Medworthy, and I do a lot of technical support and community-based technical support of Minds, and talk about a lot of technical IT related stuff, as well as quite a bit of politics.
Okay, so for those of you who, thank you, by the way, Mark. For those of you who don't know, I am Rumble has become officially the third biggest platform. I recently started doing some change. I recently started doing some changes, and I actually started posting up my content. And by the way, I'll get into where I am at right now. I am at in order of size of following on video platforms, BitChute, MGTOW TV, Rumble is now third. It has recently passed Odyssey, Bradion, and YouTube, which has been growing surprisingly fast when you consider the fact that I figured out how heavily I'm being censored there. I'll give you just give you a quick rundown on it, and hopefully it won't turn into a topic zero. I have 110, 112 followers on Rumble. When I post a video up at Rumble, I get, generally speaking, somewhere between 30 and 60 views, which is probably about 30 to 60%, depending upon the number of followers that I've got. I was lucky, even when I was getting close to 900 on YouTube, I was lucky on most videos to get 40 or 50. So yeah. And the same thing applies with, not so much on Odyssey, but same MGTOW TV and BitChute. I also will get much high, like somewhere between about 30 and 60% of my subscriber totals will watch the videos, or at least I will get that in terms of views. And I was like, if I got 10% on YouTube, so yeah, censorship there, definitely. And also for your information, I am at Facebook, Minds, Gab, MeWe, and Getter and TLB Talks. And yeah, I have recently started posting back up at Minds, Gab, Getter, and MeWe. Again, although I've been limiting it to groups that I actively run, or groups that are a lot more active on there, and not just posting up everywhere. Because like doing a posting run on those last 4 sites took me, to cover all of them, took me somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, and I haven't got time for that anymore. So the topics for tonight, and it's a Canada heavy, and it's also a very politics heavy thing right at the start. Justin Trudeau making attempts to become UN Secretary General. Yeah, man, I wish I was joking about that one. 2, Canadian government censoring all contrary discussion to official residential school narrative. That one actually hits kind of close to home for me. 3, J.D. Vance owns Tim Walz at the VP debates. Tim Walz pretty much beats himself. Topic number 4, Iran launches large-scale missile attacks on Israel. And then we have a corporate section, starting out with A, Hooters and Pizza Hut shutting down multiple locations, and B, Netflix cancellations up 300% after the corporation endorses Harris. And Netflix has got a nasty history. Topic number 6, Professor Allan Lichtman, who predicted Harris' victory in his research, getting called out for serious bias. Oh, boy, did he ever. And topic number 7, FEMA getting caught using DEI in regard to Hurricane Helene victims. Also, money appears to be hard, though. There's a whole narrative around Hurricane Helene, which isn't happening with the hurricane down in Florida, because I think the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, has been taking a much more active approach about the hurricane that hit the west coast of Florida as opposed to what happened in North Carolina. So without further ado, let's just get into topic number 1. And when I saw this, I just like, oh man, it's bad enough that we here in Canada have to deal with Justin Trudeau. I don't think it's fair that the rest of you also have to deal with this guy. It's just not right. I routinely have to, when I see large piles of crap, useless piles of crap, I have to go over and apologize to those useless piles of crap for comparing them to Trudeau. That tells you about my opinion of Justin Trudeau. But yeah, okay, yeah, Glenn, your girlfriend can definitely bring some stuff up about the Hooters topic. Yeah, well, that's going to be a very interesting topic, definitely. I can definitely see, though, why they would be pushing to have Trudeau be the Secretary General. I mean, if there is an absolute suck up and brown noser and hypocrite, and the person who would be the perfect puppet to be the new UN Secretary General, it would be Trudeau. Trudeau is unlike the U.S. election, which appears to be relatively close at this point. Trudeau, the Liberals in Canada would be lucky if they might actually finish third in total number of seats, which would be unprecedented for the Liberal Party in Canada, because the Liberal Party in Canada has only on one other occasion has either won or finished second, like in literally every election except the 93 election. And that tells you how unpopular Trudeau is. Trudeau's stink has gotten so bad that it's finally even going over to the NDP, which would be the third party, which I believe is actually the Liberals in Great Britain, but they don't even have really a third party in the United States. But it's reached that party and it's starting to hurt the NDP as well, which is probably a good thing. Could I see Justin Trudeau becoming the next Secretary General? I really hope it doesn't happen, because it's not fair that the rest of the world has to deal with this stupidity and not just us. But yeah, they are serious about this. Trudeau is not going to win the next election here. Like, it's just not going to happen. And Trudeau is still useful, unlike Joe Biden, whose brain has just, like, he's got dementia, period. So, yes, on behalf of Canadians everywhere, I am sorry that the UN is actually considering this a-hole to be Secretary General, but that's the direction that they appear to be going in, because Trudeau is not going to win the next election, and it might happen as early as this spring, because, well, I'm not going to get into too much of the actual politics in Canada right now, but it's turned out that the two parties that have been propping him up for the past 3 or 4 years which would be the Bloc Québécois and the NDP, have both decided that the alliance that they had with the Liberals is broken, and they're going to support him on a case-by-case basis, which means Trudeau is eventually going to lose. And I am done with this particular topic. Who wants to go next? We should have figured this out before I got started. Mark?
Okay, I'll go. Just a minor point. You said the Liberal Democrats being the third party in UK. Traditionally, they have been, but I'm just thinking at the moment it's more like the Reform, the recently created Reform Party. But that's just a minor point. Justin Trudeau, what can I say about him? Funnily enough, the idea of Justin Trudeau becoming a high-ranking member in the UN reminded me of what Tony Blair tried to do back in 2016, in which he tried to before he created the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, in which he tried to become the UN member or UN embassy for the Middle East. Yeah, I just find that quite interesting. But I don't know. Presumably, Justin Trudeau will be removed next year, and he's looking for a new. He will be looking for a new gig afterwards, obviously. So traditionally, when MPs when politicians finish the sort of tenureship, they go on the talks circuit, so they'll write a few books and I don't know, do a few I don't know, dinner parties, sort of speeches and that sort of thing. That's, yeah, we'll have to see and see what happens with Justin. But yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this one. I doubt if he's going to become the UN Secretary General, and I hope not, for all of our sakes. But yeah. Roger, Glenn, have either of you got any viewpoints?
Okay, what's to go next? Roger? Okay, yeah, Roger, you can go next.
Well, I actually checked out this thing on the Liberal Party in Canada, and first thing that caught my mind is the fact that it's actually a federal political party. And like, I guess Canada does a lot where they consolidate it all to a federal level. And like here in the United States, we don't connect the political part. We're not supposed to connect political parties to the federal government, or like state governments are not. It's a distinct party that's separate from government. Or, you know, how Mark has an issue with me saying government and state laws and stuff like that, but we don't do that. And it's like, that's the one thing that really stuck out to me when I found out that. And another thing is, I was under the impression that they're Big Tent. They're referred to as like a Big Tent party, you know, and they practice like brokerage politics. So they'll basically go either one direction or the other. You know, they sit in between the Conservative Party, and I guess you guys have a new Democrat Party that's in Canada.
Yeah, they're left of center. I wouldn't. Well, I guess you probably could call them socialist now. They wouldn't quite be considered socialist, but they're definitely left of the liberals.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I seen from them. It's tough to say because, like, for me, I personally don't consider the Conservative Party in Canada to be like conservative. You know what I mean? I find a lot of things that they do there are weird, and that's even when it comes to like the colonies in the British Empire. Weird, you know what I mean? Canada is like weird. That's something that's I can say, because like I've been talking to people from Australia and New Zealand, and they've got some weird politics going on. But then when you get into Canada, it gets even weirder. And like even hearing the idea of Trudeau being a part of the UN is kind of weird, you know what I mean? Because like, what does Canada have with the European Union and anything like that, you know, of all things? And then all of a sudden, he's getting caught up in the UN and wanting a position on them. It's really strange hearing stuff like that. But I don't know. He's a weird guy. And the weirdest part about him is his father was the one that gave a got a constitution put in place for Canada. You know what I mean? So you got it going from one side all the way to the other. You know, it's really strange. And I've heard so many things about him. I've heard that like he's the illegitimate son of Castro and just crazy stuff like that. So that's pretty much all I can basically say about it. It's just strange. Canada's weird. And that's it.
Yeah, I will give people a 101 on Canada here right after I let Henrik have his say.
Oh, thank you very much. And I will absolutely 100% accept the unconditional surrender of Canada to the United States of America, especially if Trudeau is to ascend to the supposed head, let alone any position of the United Nations. If he wants to get up there and surrender your country to ours, by all means. I know I'm just some humble dude that has a crappy media company and knows how to operate a forklift without, turning it into a fully automatic death machine.
3 kinds of forklifts. We're not going to, don't bullshit. 3 kinds of forklifts. Trying to get certified for 4.
Right, yeah, but, I'm certain that I could definitely, absolutely, manage the negotiations for Trudeau to go to the UN and say, I would like to give America all of my country so we can have freedom, and yeah, that would be nice. But
well, it's still in the realm of reality.
Yeah, within the realm of reality. Look, I know that a lot of the people in government who are going and becoming the popular parties or have been the incumbents for many years, especially in Europe and Canada, the liberal agendas, the World Economic Forums and all that stuff, and the Alex Jones was right stuff. Can you guys just keep him, please? Keep him in a closet or something with, like, some woodchucks or something to keep him busy. I mean, for the love of God.
In the closet.
Keep him in the closet, she tells me. Oh, I don't know. Last time he was in the closet, it took a strong Russian man to pull him out of there, and it didn't turn out too well. Oh, most certainly did have a lot of that. That was one of the last times I was hanging out with Naroki and Rearson and everyone. Was talking about how, in order to make Justin Trudeau a more masculine person that wouldn't be a total doormat for the CCP, is he should do bongs of vodka, listen to some hard boss, and,
And then go cheeky freaky.
Yes, but regrettably, he's not going to do that, So, yeah. Him getting involved in the UN, yes. Canada does need a strong stance on the world stage. Yes, you guys need to stop being laughed at for being chased around by horny moose and angry Chinese grandmas that got kicked out of the casino for counting cards or something. Canada's a country to be taken seriously. You guys did win the War of 1812. I'm not going to lie about that. You guys did pretty damn good there, We shook hands and said, all right, you guys go north, we stay here south, and that's going to be that. But at him trying to get involved in the UN, I don't think he has the britches for it. I don't think he has the statesmanship. From the Canadians I know, like you and Rearson, and a handful of other people I've run into here and there, you guys don't seem like you want to be complete doormats for the rest of the world. So I think you guys, if you guys want to get into the United Nations and have an actual serious stance on anything, you need a serious strongman like Captain Canada from the comic books and that, who's going to go up there and go ahead and say that, okay, yes, we're Canada, we're an oil country, we're not a third world frozen over tundra of death. We are actual people that mean something, I mean, for the love of God, half the reason we made the Geneva Convention was because your people were killing Germans in excruciating manners. So, I mean, hey, seriously, it's something to consider, yes, but Trudeau, nope. Can you lock him in a closet with a badger and a moose or something and a couple woodchucks and see what happens? And like that, seriously, all I got is, if you want to be in the United Nations, you want to actually be a serious country in that, for the love of God, get someone that isn't the bastard child of Castro, please.
And to one point, if I think we Brits have got the first dibs on Canada, but you're welcome to have Canada at the present moment.
Oh my God. Yeah, Trudeau, they literally had to suspend Parliament because Trudeau has gotten involved. I don't know the details of it. We might be covering it for 403. Like, they were going to, there was a non-confidence motion which got defeated by the Conservatives. And then another scandal erupted, and rather than answer questions about it, Trudeau basically suspended Parliament for a few weeks, which is hopefully going to do a lot to stall or prevent the passing of Bill C-63. And you don't even want to get me started on that. But I mean, Trudeau has gotten lucky in as far as the fact that the conservatives, by the way, when we talk about liberal and conservative in the Commonwealth countries versus what they consider liberal and conservative in the United States, from a political point of view, yeah, what Roger was saying is actually very true. I have seen some bizarre stuff. And I mean, there's been Americans that have come up here and have been like absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, there was a party up here called the Reform Party at one point, which technically considered itself right of the Conservative Party of Canada. And they had the leader of that party, the Reform Party, Preston Manning, on a show sitting right next to Ron the Hedgehog Jeremy. And you were listening, and and Preston Manning started talking, and it was like, and Ron Jeremy was like, what? I thought you were supposed to be conservative. This is what conservative is in Canada. Maybe I'm living in the wrong place, because Preston Manning did not sound like a far right guy. We have had situations in the past, and this is no bullshit, where we had a death penalty initiative brought up by the Liberals. A Liberal Party brought up to reinstate the death penalty, and it got shot down by the Conservatives, which is just absolutely, like, if that happened in the U.S., that would have been like, they would have been like, what? Yeah, that's, so liberal and conservative, it's more like a spectrum rather than kind of like an ideological sort of thing, which it is with, say, the Republicans and the Democrats in the U.S., but that's, what Roger is saying about politics in Canada and liberal and conservative not necessarily being the same thing as they are in the U.S. is definitely true. With that, though, let me just,
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to add something too that Glenn said, and the thing about the United States about Canada doesn't want the United States. So we've already determined that they don't want us. We're just a little bit too rowdy for them.
Well, I mean, if push comes to shove, I think if Alberta was given a choice, especially if things get really bad, I mean, I live in Alberta. If I was given a choice between Alberta becoming its own country or Alberta becoming a state or a territory of the U.S., I would probably take the former rather than Alberta being its own country, just simply because of all of the predators, China, for instance, that are lurking out there that would definitely try to exploit what Alberta has. And Alberta's got quite a bit going for it.
Yeah, it does.
It's the money. It is basically they're the money maker of Canada. It's Alberta's tax dollars that are basically supplementing the poor provinces. And again, I don't mind doing that, but I mean, it's like specifically one province in Canada. Quebec seems to somehow think that they're somehow entitled to it, as opposed to it's sort of like, yeah, it's our money. And I don't even want to start getting into the environmental restrictions they're putting on Quebec to prevent Quebec because Quebec's a big province, and Quebec is being inhibited from developing its own resources. And that's the reason why they're a have-not as opposed to a have province. But anyway, let me get on, because we've got one more topic to discuss around Canada tonight, and that is the residential schools. Now, I have to point something out here about the residential schools. I actually had family members that ended up in the residential schools. I heard a lot of inflammatory rhetoric around the residential schools when I started talking to some of my relatives about the two women that were at the residential schools. Their description of what happened with them is what happened is that in September, they would go off to these residential schools, and in June, they would come back and work on the farm for the summer. And there wasn't any issues with abuse or bullying or whatever at the school they went to. Now, was there abuse going on? Was there prejudice? Was there all of that stuff? Yeah, there definitely was. Here's the issue now. This thing has been dragging on for a few years now. And one of the big questions that keeps coming up, and this is part of the reason why they're trying to censor all discussion about the residential school narrative, is that to date, not one single body has been excavated from all these places. And apparently, if you want to believe the narrative, there should be thousands of dead Native kids on these residential schools. And they've had they're going on now 3-4 years, and they have not produced a single solitary body. There have been 3 excavations. There have been 3, and we're talking about like they had armed security and whatnot at these places to prevent tampering of evidence and that sort of thing. There have been 3 archaeological level excavations of grave sites around schools, and they have not found anything. They have not excavated the original school where everything took place, which is Kamloops. They have not, in any form or fashion, attempted to do an excavation and autopsy on any of the graves that exist there. Like none. And when they've been asked questions about it, they not only do they not answer, but they start screaming at the people who are doing it and calling them racist. Now, here's the thing, and this is something that happened with me at work this last rotation. There were these orange shirts handed out, and they were like literally, this was a corporate initiative, but it was these orange shirts, and it was like every child matters, and they wanted us all to go and post a group photo with all of us wearing these orange shirts. And I refused to wear my orange shirt, even though I have had relatives that went to these schools. Now, keep in mind, I'm Métis, not Native, but I will say that Métis kids in Western Canada, if they lived on reservations, they were also, I won't say forced, because my 2 aunts that went to the school, they were not forced; they went voluntarily. So the narrative, the victim cult, like part of what is going on here is that there is a victim culture narrative. There's like literal tax money tied into a victim industrial complex around this particular situation. And what's going on is that evidence on the fringes is becoming louder and louder and louder and louder. How's it going, Kelso? It's becoming louder and louder and louder. It's getting harder and harder to ignore. So the government is now taking steps to censor discussion about the residential schools, because it turns out that no, it wasn't. For instance, one of the numbers that Kevin Arnett talked about when this whole thing came out, he said, like, well, 80,000 Native kids died in these residential schools. Well, first of all, if you plan that out over the whole time the residential school system was in place, that would have amounted to between 6 and 10 kids per school per year over about a century is what it would have amounted down to. If kids were dying in those residential schools at that level, someone would have noticed a lot sooner. So that number doesn't make any sense. One of the things that I have pointed out, though, I mean, and don't know what that conference is that when the Nazis were running Germany, but when the Nazis were running Germany, they had this thing called the final solution, and that's where they came up with the idea of the concentration camps, where they would concentrate all of these undesirables in certain specific areas, as opposed to having everything be spread out, and it would make the killing of certain groups of people less detectable. Now, did something like that happen in Canada? Well, I can't say for sure, but if something like that happened in Canada, then the question, we go right back around to the first point. Where are the bodies? Like there's a lake in Poland where they dump so many ashes of dead people that were killed in the crematoriums into this lake that this lake is permanently gray colored, right? And it's like they haven't produced anything, and anybody who bothers to question the narrative.
Hey, no wonder Trudeau applauded a Nazi.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a whole they were actively censoring any discussion about this. The Canadian government has been actively censoring any discussion about this issue and pulling out all of the race cards and whatever. And this is they're gonna have to produce a body or bodies now, because it's like there's questions being asked, and I think I'm not out of line as somebody who actually had relatives in these residential schools. Like, where are the fucking bodies? Like, where the fuck are they? You ask anybody who was Jewish in Europe, where are the bodies? They can point you to a graveyard, or you can go to Auschwitz or some of the other concentration camps that are still around. You can see that stuff. They haven't done any of that. And rather than admit that there's a problem, they're resorting to censorship. And with that, Kelso, where do you want to go? Because we currently have it as Mark, Roger, Glenn, and then me, Mark, Roger, Glenn. Where do you want to go in this order?
I guess I'll take Steve's former position so I can just comment on what I've heard everybody else say.
Yeah, he's a smart man. I always wanted to do that too, but everybody stopped me from doing it. They're like, no.
No. Okay. So you'll go last. So I'm going to turn it. So as you can clearly see here, not see, I actually have some personal involvement in this. And I will also say one last thing about this, because I heard about the residential schools growing up from relatives in my family. And I grew up there were a lot of other Native families where I grew up, in the town that I lived in. And none of them, nobody in my extended family ever talked about people going off to these residential schools and not coming back without any explanation. Like, not one. And based upon the numbers that the Canadian government and some people have said, that should have happened. That is just my personal experience, though. I might just be an outlier. But yeah, I will also throw out the Canadian government and the American government do have a strong history of being quite racist at times. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, I just had to do some research on the residential schools because I'm not overly familiar with the entire Canadian concept. Residential schools being schools for Indian and natives, Canadian natives, that started in 1876 and ended only in 1996. It surprised me.
120 years. Sounds about right. Yeah.
I don't know. The entire victim narrative is just atypical of the so-called culture wars that we're seeing ourselves in at this present moment. And as far as I'm aware, as you're saying, there is very little evidence of any sort of any unforeseen deaths, let's just say, within those areas. But I don't know. It's just this entire concept that there has to be a victim, that there has to be some sort of narrative. There has to be an abuser. We see this with the right black arguments at the moment, and all the other genres, including things based on sexuality, race, and religion. Again, I'm not very familiar with the actual sort of recent stories, so except for the so-called graves that, as far as I'm aware, was never actually proven to be factual. So yeah, I'm not sure what I can add to that really. I think you've actually spelled it out quite well.
Roger, you're up.
Oh, okay. So, the best thing I can do when it comes to this is like, first of all, let me tell you something. I love history, dude. Okay, first of all, I do. And you're talking about people coming up missing in Canada. Hey, dude, this is like the treasure trove of freaking history and cannibalism mixed in together. Okay, and you got all these kids and shit in school. Okay, and all these people who are like they're freaking disfranchised from freaking what's really going on in their country. Okay, now Canada has always been a hard, harsh, unforgiving land. All right, where people freaking would go out into freaking, which I think they're cool areas, but like Nunavut, you know what I mean, or the Northwest Territories, and they would freaking be freezing their asses off and running out of food, and next thing you know, they're eating one another, you know what I mean? And these are facts that take place. So when it comes to people freaking not knowing where their bodies are in Canada, there's a good chance that they're eating each other, okay? And I freaking just hearing you talk right there, I had to start going over these cool freaking maps they have of Canada, and like everybody thinks of like freaking, you know, Alberta, British Columbia, and freaking Ontario and Quebec, you know, but there's a shitload of more territory than just that. I mean, you got the Northwest Territories, you got the Nunavut. You got Newfoundland and shit like that. I mean, and they've got freaking national parks and stuff up in like the northern part, like Milk. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but like these are freaking cold, freaking Icelandic freaking terrains, and they've got national parks.
Yeah, and then some of those national parks are bigger than some of the states that they have in the U.S. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Exactly. You know, I mean, so where the bodies are, man, trust me, if they wanted bodies to vanish, they're gonna find a way of making bodies vanish in Canada. That's one thing that I really know. When you just look at it and you look at the history, like they did a interstate that ran from Alaska all the way down to freaking the western part of the United States through Canada, and that was a big project. That was bigger than actually doing the Erie Canal, and also the Panama Canal as well. That was something that they had to do with Alaska and the mainland United States as well as Canada. They had to collaborate on that, and it took them a long time. You're talking about a project that was harder to do than what it was to freaking put railroad across the United States. I mean, it was a big project, and that's the one thing that stuck out on me. I really love the history on Canada, and when people talk about that, about, you know, where's the bodies and stuff. Well, dude, you know, I mean, look at the history in Canada. It's easy to make a body disappear in Canada. So
extremely easy.
You know,
extremely easy. I will comment on that when everybody's had their chance, though.
But that's basically all I got to say. I thought that was actually cool that you started talking like that, because that made me stop and really look at these maps. I remember going over this stuff, and I just love the hell out of freaking Canada's territories. That's all I got.
All right, Glenn, you're up. Sorry, Henrik, you're up.
He fell asleep.
Henrik, wakey!
Oh, there he is.
Get up,
Take a leak.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He had to go take a leak. Well, you know, it gets to his turn. I should have talked more, but it's like, I'll wait.
I was actually going to comment on your thing about, you know, people eating each other up in Canada, and my whole thought process was the Native Americans have a thing that, okay, I'm superstitious. Just in general, you don't call a supernatural creature by its name, so I call them Wendenopes. So the whole thing about them is it's more of a warning, you know, kind of for a Native American to have enough food to get them from winter, you know, fall through to spring. And so it's a sin to eat your common man. So the whole idea of the Wendenope was if somebody resorted to cannibalism, that they would continue to stay hungrier and hungrier. And it's also kind of a symbology of greed. So I do know that about, like, Canada. You share a lot of states with us, like, you know, on the border, Wyoming, Montana, a few other states that would be considered that kind of territory. So that was my first thought. I'll hand it off to you.
Fair enough, and you need to go ahead and urinate. I mean, you can always find some piles of dead Canadian native children from Saskatchewan and elsewhere, and I don't know, there are so many places where there are these children from Canada of all these supposed indigenous tribes that are just all over the place. I went to go into my bathroom, and I had many of them to pee on. So, I mean, yes. Oh, no. It is like, perhaps, you know, the government maybe lies about these things, about the children being everywhere and anywhere, and the bones all over the place to pee on. And maybe, you know, just a little bit of a thought crime. But maybe one should question before they pee on the bones. You know, maybe there are no bones in at this toilet. But, you know, you are not allowed to question the Canadian government, and you should pee where they tell you to pee, and only pee there. Yes. Because you are not allowed to question, you see. They tell you that there are over 9 billion indigenous children of Canada who has been sacrificed to the devil of the evil white man. Yes. He has totally, all of the children, even the ones being born now, no, right out of the womb into the fire of the evil white man. Yes. You're not allowed to question this. This has come from the supreme capital of Canada and from the mouth of Trudeau, who is head of United Nations. It is truth, you see. Yes. So you should give reparations and starve in winter and eat anus. Because you are evil white man who kill all these little children and pee on them and their bones.
That was excellent. Thank you.
That was excellent. I will tell you one thing about reparation before I turn it over to Kel. So there was a band in, I believe, the Kootenays back in the 70s that got a huge financial settlement for some resources that were on their reservation. They got a huge amount of money. And if you go to this reservation now, because this particular reservation, they had this fascination with this one automobile. I'm trying to remember whether it was the Trans Am or it was the Mustang, but almost a lot of the families, when they got their money, they all went out and they all bought this same vehicle. And if you go to this couple of particular towns inside this reservation and you look around, you will see these junked automobiles, all of the same make, on this reservation. And yeah, like, if you think reparations are going to actually solve anything, they won't. But anyway, let's get on to Kelso here. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hello. I know it's been a bit since I've been on. And I do think it is Lauren's first time being on RPN, is it not? Seeing as Henrik probably hasn't even been on here in well over a year due to being busy with 10 billion different freaking things. But anyway, Lauren's been on PSEC plenty of times in the past, though, as has Henrik. But moving on, as far as these specific fuckeries going on in Canada right now, as per the current topic, I don't know so much to say on the specifics of that, but what I will say is that this is on par with just a lot of things that have been happening in general, just like lots of different things, from weather modification to everything else. And I've noticed the tactic they're using, because they know they can't hide truth forever. Like, people fuck around and find out, right? So what they've been doing is, it seems they've been putting out all different, I guess you could say, versions of the truth. In other words, you've got the extremely hyperbolic version, which, while it isn't totally completely wrong, jumps the shark a bit to try to throw some people off the track. You know, someone gets interested, then they start hearing all this hyperbolic stuff, and they're like, it's just more Alex Jones bullshit. So now you didn't wake up that particular normie because they ran into the hyperbolic video. Then you've got the opposite, to where it's being downplayed, like, oh yeah, some stuff happened, but, you know, nothing to see here. These aren't the droids you're looking for, and everything, you know, in between. So they're trying to basically, when people are noticing things and looking into these topics, they're trying to demolish people's sense of reason and confound them, because they already know that people are going to have charged emotions, you know, whether it's, you know, bodies that may or may not be in Canada, or just what exactly does weather modification mean anyway, and, you know, is FEMA or is FEMA not doing XYZ, ABC, etc., blah, blah, blah. And, you know, tons more crazy stuff, whether you're talking about the not one but two assassination attempts on Trump, or it doesn't matter the topic. That all of these different expressions of putting it out that contains some truths, but then either jumps the shark completely to turn people off, or downplays it to make sure a person doesn't get interested, depending on who they are. And again, things between. So we all need to be really, really super careful, because what a lot of people tend to do, whether it's liberals, conservatives, or even so-called truthers, and, you know, we see this also on, like, you know, people like watching like Max Egan and Jeff Berwick and things like that. Like, you know, Max or Jeff or whoever will be saying, you know, you know, what the person wants to hear, until the second they don't. Until the second maybe they just say, well, in my opinion, it's this. And then all of a sudden they've pissed off half of everybody listening, because everybody and their mother's easily fucking triggered, not just leftist Stalinistic snowflakes, but so-called truthers, conservatives, etc. So we got to be really vigilant, calm down our emotions, look at all the different perspectives coming out, and just pull all the data together and ask ourselves, okay, what makes sense to us? What seems rational? What seems logical? What seems reasonable? because that is something that, as we know, people on the internet these days tend to not be in a really big habit of doing. And you've got all these headline readers who will read a headline, maybe the first paragraph if you're lucky, and then it doesn't even matter what the rest of the article says or not. They do this in articles too. It's kind of interesting where you'll see like the headline in the first paragraph or two is just complete shit. Then you read further down and they drop a whole bunch of information in there that is actually true. But the problem is that with that headline in that first paragraph or two, you've already lost the reader. That's as far as they read, and then they clicked on to Skibbity Toilet or whatever the fuck they're going on to. You know, so yeah, we really have to be vigilant and not jump to conclusions. Calm down, weigh all the evidence carefully, and you know, with what I'm about to say, like I know that it's not. Excuse me. It's not specifically on this topic, but it's relevant to my, you know, my warnings as far as, you know, this or any other topic. And I posted this the other day. I said, seeing as I tend to be a more middle ground person, I want to quickly address a topic that's been rather popular as of late. Can governments, the ruling class, etc., create the weather? No. Can they control the weather? No. Can they modify the weather? Absolutely yes. It is very important to understand the difference between geoengineering, modification, and the idea of, quote, creating and controlling. They're not the same. Small storms can only be, quote, created if pre-existing environmental conditions exist first. For example, one company brags about how they brought snow to the desert in Saudi Arabia. The process there was to evaporate seawater to create a small storm over the ocean. Then they steer it and amplify it and modify it. Eventually it reached the target area and you've got snow. They did not just make snow magically appear in the desert. That's not possible. They cannot create hurricanes. I'm sure they'd love to be able to do that. What they can do, however, is steer them on abnormal trajectories and make them a bit stronger than they might have otherwise been. So there are physical limits to the things that they can do. These are governments, not Zeus.
Yeah.
So is weather modification being weaponized against us? Absolutely. But at the same time, let's be real about exactly what that means. Let's not pretend a hand grenade is a nuke, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, it's a serious problem. It needs to be contended with and does a lot of damage and whatever, but it's not the hyperbolic jumping the shark, you know? So right now we see a lot of videos, fear videos. Oh my God, you know, these hurricanes, North Carolina, Florida, they're controlling the weather. Oh my God, fear, live in fear. Ooh, the demigod, Klaus Schwab, is controlling the hurricane penis. You know, and of course, some of you have already seen my little illustration and voice thing about Hurricane Stalin and the vaginal eye wall and the communism shitstorm and the penetrating dicks into the rectum of Florida. And, you know, I went on that whole sarcastic thing. But yeah, it's like, it's just to make the point, calm down, don't get hyperbolic. You know, don't downplay it, don't upplay it. Just like, let's look at the information. Let's let some time pass. So whether it's about what bodies are or aren't where in Canada and how the fuck they did or didn't get there, or weather modification, or anything, period. Pick your controversial topic. Calm the fuck down and be rational and know that, you know, there's going to be nuggets of truth gold mixed in mud, and you've got to pan for it. And if you're lazy and you don't want to do the panning work and you'd rather just support the current thing, whether it's the liberal thing or the current Trump thing or the current so-called truther thing where there's a Jew around every corner that's going to stick his dick in you if you bend over to smell a rose, or whatever ridiculous fucking thing. It's like, yeah, you know, Don't be those guys. Calm down and just look at all the information and try to come to some rational conclusions, and make sure you are very clear about the difference between, okay, here is what we do actually know, and here is just speculation and my fucking opinion. It's fine to speculate. It's fine to have an opinion, but be clear on the difference between, okay, here's what we actually know, and then the rest of all this that I'm about to say is just me thinking what I think. I might be right. I might be wrong. I don't know. Time will tell. Because people need to be more clear and stop getting hyperbolic and jumping the shark and cranking it up to 11 and going full retard. Never go full retard.
Yeah, that's
it. That's all I got to say on it.
Yeah, that whole thing about hurricanes probably could have been left for topic number 7. By the way, it was because we are going to be discussing the hurricane. It's the last topic It's the last topic tonight. So
more into that. I only wanted to mention it in enough of a ways it's to make the main point, because my point wasn't about the hurricane right now. My point is that people are saying all sorts of shit. Some of it's hyperbolic, some of it's not. This topic and many others. So it's just like people need to calm down and just like look at all the stuff. And a lot of people are not calmed down.
Yeah, I was just going to add to you. As you say, a lot of people don't go past the first paragraph of so-called news stories, and a lot of these news stories can be quite biased with the journalists or the so-called journalists on commentary on them. I can think of certain newspapers that do this, but yeah, it's just a matter of being fairly skeptical about everything and doing your own research and try and keep a level head.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're going to move on here because we still got another 5 topics to cover. So, all right. So the next topic, and this is one that the Americans can get into here. I actually saw some of this debate, though.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well,
Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blamed Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during...
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status.
Right.
temporary protected status. Nora?
But
Thank you.
Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
we're
because
going to turn out of the
debate,
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
J.D. Vance, well, it depends on, well, I mean, from what I saw, it looked like J.D. Vance pretty much, I mean, he didn't decimate Joe Biden the way Trump absolutely smashed Joe Biden in that debate back in June. But J.D. Vance appeared to do very well against Tim Walz, to the point where even the mainstream media was kind of like, yeah, Tim, you didn't really do as well as we were hoping you were going to. The ironic part about this is that Tim Walz, and keep in mind, this is the guy who, I mean, if you think Kamala is bad, it looks like Tim Walz is just like curly, almost. Like that's a literal analogy that I'm thinking of when I look at Tim Walz. I keep thinking about curly, and not in a good way. You know, Tim Walz beat Tim Walz in that debate. And you got to understand that they were also a lot more careful about allowing who was going to moderate that debate. Although apparently, from what I was seeing, it looked like the two journalists that were moderating, the network that was moderating this debate, was even more so running block for Walz than they were for Kamala Harris. But yeah, from where I saw it, it looked like J.D. Vance pretty much won it. But I'm not so much whether he won that particular VP debate. It was more like Tim Walz lost it. And the bigger picture here is that, if you look at the current polls, and polls are not necessarily the most accurate measure because of what's happened in the last two elections in the U.S., but the polls now, currently as it stands, all of the swing states except Wisconsin now, and even in Wisconsin, the lead is just like razor thin. All of the swing states are now in Trump's favor, we're literally right back where we were when Biden was pretty much forced to step down back in July and allow Harris to take over. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, because again, right, political debates can not necessarily be the most exciting thing to watch unless you're really, really into politics. And I got to point out that Rierson was the one who was really, really into politics. I'm usually more into like culture and that type of thing. But it looked like, from my perspective, it looked like J.D. Vance pretty much won that debate. I won't say in a walk, but he did pretty well. And the only other thing that I'm going to say about this is that, and this is something that I think a couple of us here will know about. Peter Thiel was the guy who funded J.D. Vance's electoral runs. Now, Peter Thiel is not the super evil deep state person like some of the other individuals that have been discussed here, but he does have some very suspicious ties, especially within QTEL and some of his associations or whatever, but nothing's actually been directly planted on Peter Thiel. But again, right, like there's enough red flags around Peter Thiel and the fact that he's the guy who was directly financing JD Vance that it's sort of like, yeah, maybe he's not. Maybe JD Vance may not have been the best choice. You may have actually probably maybe wanted RFK Jr. or somebody like that. But yeah, no, the VP debate was won by JD Vance. Like, I mean, to the point where even the MSM was kind of like going, well, no, Tim Walz kind of underperformed. But again, that's just from what I saw. Other people may have other different opinions. And again, right, when it comes to the American election right now, we're trying to figure out right now whether the country is going to collapse in on itself by 2030, or whether it's going to keep limping along until it's in the 40s. That's where my mentality is going with this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
I've been trying to not follow the U.S. elections as much as possible. All I can say is, being a Brit, being the only Brit here, in the UK, the run-up to elections usually lasts for 6 weeks. But in the US, it seems like they go on for months and months and months and months. It's just, I don't know. It just seems like the Americans like to make such a song and dance about elections, and I get it. People need to be informed. Also, there is the mainstream thing that newspapers need to be sold. TV need to get viewers. But yeah, it just seems like it's gone on forever. Yeah.
Okay, Roger, you're up.
I think we're just still on a break.
I think you may not be back, so we'll go over to Glenn then.
You mean over to Henrik, aka Obi-Wan Kenobi, and his beautiful other half, Lauren Tull, aka Dr. Claudia Finch.
Oh, yeah! Oh, nice. Thank you, Dave, for the great introduction. Well, I would like to say, on my off time, I would like to possibly urinate onto the non-existent Aboriginal Canadian space alien children's corpses that totally do not exist. Do not question your government. But
there's no party like a Nazi party, yeah.
Yes, lots of perverting to get the blood pumping for the children.
Nazi and communism, it's a party. Yeah.
It's a party.
Yeah, and the game to play at that party is called Spot the Difference.
I actually remember hearing on YouTube that we're talking about Tim Walz and JD Vance, right?
Yep.
And Tim Walz saying, and almost like Biden, I'm actually friends with school shooters.
Yes, totally. I was friends with the dudes that committed Columbine, and I was absolutely best buddies with the kid that put the dress on and went into the Christian school to eat the children alive with a machete. Absolutely.
Which is why it was so easy for me to sell them all those guns.
Let's get back
Oh,
to
sorry, was that my outside voice?
Let's get back to the eating part, eating children and shit. Especially if they're Canadian.
Tim Walz is so unpopular that even crazed school shooters don't want to have anything to do with them.
Well, especially Canadian kids. Eating Canadian kids just sounds so cool, you know what I mean? And the Wendigo thing, I agree with you on that. But I also heard somebody say something that was very, very interesting, and it's actually got a lot of fact to it. Now, like those old teachings that the shamans and the Native American Canadian tribes taught, for them to start doing that, there had to have been a problem that occurred before that. You know what I mean? So apparently, at some point in their history, people were eating one another when they were starving to death up there in those cold areas, and that's kind of what I was getting into with the disfranchise, or however you say it. Like people today.
Means they do not exist, yet they do. Yes, the things are being on these.
They have no concept of the dangers that are going on around them when it comes to natural things. So like here in the United States, it's the same problem. You know what I mean? They're completely disconnected with frickin' what's going on with them in the real world. So there is a good chance they're eating one another up there.
I mean, in very rural areas where you have like no daylight for a good portion of the year or very minimal daylight, and let's say a harvest wasn't the greatest because, well, weather is what weather is, you know, and you don't have enough saved in reserves because you didn't ration it out well enough, and you're isolated, there's nobody to go to, you're obviously going to eat your pets first.
And you're going to eat the dogs, and you're going to eat the cat, and then you're going to eat everyone else.
Wieners.
You're going to piss off the Haitians because they won't be able to eat dogs and cats.
File a lawsuit against my company if you can find it. I dare you. Your name has been spoken. Do it. I have a lawyer. I want to see my day in court where I can dance upon and pee on your children who are dead from Canadian war crimes that didn't exist.
But like you eat all of your animals, and then you eventually eat your relatives, starting with the weakest and ending with the strongest.
It's usually the old ones first. So the old ones go first, and then after that you go to the children. So look for the elderly disappearing in the area, and I guarantee you'll connect it to the children that are gone too. Anybody even talk about missing elderly people in Canada?
Actually, well, they want to talk about the missing. A lot of times they'll talk about the missing women, but they don't talk about again, I grew up in a town called Prince George, which is like near several hundred miles north of the U.S.-Canada border. We have a road. Jaffe knows about it, and Brierson know about it. Known as, maybe you guys may have heard of it, called the Highway of Tears. It runs. It's known as the Yellowhead Highway. Basically, once you cross over, once you get west of Jasper, that road between Jasper and Prince Rupert, there's only like maybe 5, and keep in mind, it's a 10-hour drive across the whole province. 10, 11, 12 hours to drive down that whole Yellowhead Highway if you go from one end to the other. There's maybe only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's maybe only six or 8 towns of any significant size along that route.
Mm-hmm.
And actually not just native, people go missing on that highway. Not so much anymore because people are aware of what's going on there, but I mean, for years, for decades, there are people disappearing on that highway for decades, and they've never find the bodies because basically once you get about a mile off the Yellowhead on that run, it was nothing but wilderness. You know, like nothing, well, I won't say nothing, but I mean, it was like, yeah, it was like you were out in the wilderness. Just once you get a mile or so off the Yellowhead Highway, it's extremely easy to hide bodies in that area, which is why that particular section of the Yellowhead Highway is known as the Highway of Tears, specifically the run between Prince George and Prince Rupert.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, we're completely off the JD Vance topic, so let's get back on topic.
I like the cannibalism thing. That's just so cool, dude. Like, especially Canadian cannibalism, because you guys know how to do it. you guys know how to you rock it, dude.
Yeah, we're as you can
Well,
clearly.
that's why I've been quiet. I'm just letting everybody else do my segue dirty work for me while I shut up and laugh.
Yeah, I can see Mark Edworthy is getting exposed to the one standard, no standard rule that the Red Pill Nation actually applies here. Yeah, welcome to the Red Pill Nation, Mark. To quote Rearson, one standard, no standard. Anybody else want to comment about J.D. Vance, or do we even care?
Here you go, honey.
I would like to say that Mr. Vance teabagged the shit out of tampon teabagging Timmy by telling him that he was a weak little man with a weak little voice from a weak little state, because all he knew how to do was to do a lot of crack cocaine with Hunter Biden and talk about how he was best friends at school shooters and being a whiny little statist. Yes. Vote for me. I'll give you more dead bodies and welfare. Cannibalism? You'll have plenty of cannibalism under me, Mr. Walz. Oh, yeah. All the cannibalism you can desire.
I gotta say is that Tim Walz presided over those fiery but mostly peaceful protests, lest we have collective amnesia.
Oh, you're right about that. His wife was practically rubbing herself as she was sniffing the dead bodies. She said so on multiple television interviews and went, "Oh, yeah, corpses. Nothing gets me off to my master than the corpses of the innocent burning in downtown as we pray to the lives that matter, which are the corpses."
So the Tim Walz is married to Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
Well,
she was touching herself. She was touching herself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She loved it. She loved to put her head outside the
My
window.
privilege. My privilege. Yes. Privilege is Schmiegel's privilege. Yes, he's married to Schmiegel because he's obviously into midget scat porn and he's gay.
Okay, come on now, dude. You gotta be fair. You actually did sit with me and gave me a review on gay porn. All right, so Dave, you gotta really. You're the only person that's ever done that for me, where you actually gave a freaking review on gay porn. So I gotta give you kudos.
Yeah, I went on a sarcastic rant. Are you talking about the Hurricane Stalin and the penetrating decks?
No, that was afterwards. That was the one with Mark Wachowicz from Dragus when we were all hanging out together. You started talking to me about Brokeback Mountain and your review on it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like I didn't know it was going to be as cringe and disgusting as it actually was. And a friend of mine asked me to watch it. I'm like, okay. And I watch it, and I'm like, dude, this is a porn pretending to be a regular movie and failing badly.
Yeah.
Like, nah. Kind of like Cuties with softcore child porn pretending not to be. Brokeback Mountain is gay porn, straight up, not even softcore, like gay porn, pretending to be a regular movie. It's like, oh, we swear this is a regular movie. Trust? No, it's not. Not.
The only person that I've ever had actually give me a review on Brokeback Mountain, dude. Only person that and I give you kudos for that because that takes bravery. That really does.
Again, to be fair, I didn't know what I was getting into when the friend suggested it.
But
I mean, you know what? Just because there's a couple of gay characters in a movie is not a deal breaker for me. You know, it's like I just don't like the forced ideological fucking bullshit that they like to put in everything. Like, oh, you got to have a gay couple, then you got to have the trans person, and then the white person has to be hooked up with a black person, otherwise it's racism. Like, I don't like all that fucking bullshit that they do in like four out of 5 movies these days. But this is way back in the day before they were doing that. It's like, okay, the main characters are gay, so what? I did not know what I was getting into, but I found out. I'm like, and now this is a gay porn pretending not to me. I'm sorry. Just stop now. Get some help. Just no. That movie was.
Do like it. That's what will happen. You will take it in the anus and you will like it.
But we will just assume that is Tim Walz' all-time favorite movie to bring things back on topic.
Yeah. Now, what
10 out
was
of
it?
10, his best film, because, dear God, did he have a poor performance.
Oh my God!
God.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as Biden's, but it was pretty damn close. I mean, you know, when the Babylon Bee comes out with an article the next day saying school shooters disavow Tim Walz, like it was bad. Does anybody else have anything more to say on this one, or can we move on to the next topic?
No, what
Yeah,
was
let's
the,
go
what
on
was
to the
the,
next one. I mean,
what
I
was
think
the
I
deal though? What was the deal though about Waltz's military record? You guys know much about that?
There we go.
Um,
These are not the droids we're looking for. Let us move along to the
Oh my
next
God,
topic.
he really lied about his rank and everything. I mean, the guy ought to be drawn and quartered for that as treason.
Was it Stolen Valor?
Yep, Stolen Fowler and Blue Falcon. He was lying through his fucking teeth. He never served a day in battle.
If I remember correctly, somebody encountered him in a bar and called him out on that shit.
Yep, and
oh yeah,
Zamba.
he was also in China during the Tiananmen Square protest, which also turned out to be a lie.
Oh,
Don't forget
yeah.
that one as well.
Yeah, I think my gal's right. Whenever he breathes, he's lying. Just stop.
I mean, just like most politicians. All right, well, so let's move on to the next topic here. This one is really interesting, and it doesn't. I mean, this one kind of causes me to put my conspiracy theory tinfoil hat, supplied to me graciously by Tinfoil Hats R Us. That's right, folks. If you're worried about those pesky alien abductions, Tinfoil Hats R Us has got a hat for you. All styles, all shapes, all sizes, even for the family pet. Yes, if you were concerned about aliens abducting you and probing you in uncomfortable positions, Tinfoil Hats R Us can help prevent that. Look at what happened to Rearson. He's lost his tinfoil hat and he hasn't been on for a while. Coincidence? Do. Anyway, with that out of the way, that's right, Tinfoil Hats R Us. Operators are standing by. Just remember, either type in or scream in, "They're not gonna get me!" as loudly as humanly possible when making your order to get 10% off your first tinfoil.
Hey, Naroki, if we're gonna do this, let's do it right.
Yours today. You're a thought criminal. Then Tinfoil Hats R Us, as you covered, with one of their stylish hats. You can be protected from all of the things that people like me will insist that government isn't doing to you. If you suffer from the mental illness called thinking, and order yours today.
Thank you for finding that, Dave. I truly do.
Oh, I've got all the other ones. Like, you know how you're talking about RPN having no standards?
For those
Go ahead, put that one up.
Standards are on RPN. The answer is simple. The Red Pill Nation has no standards, none whatsoever, and it doesn't need any. Besides, if they had any standards, do you really think they'd have me, Taylor Swift, explaining this to you? Surely not.
Yeah, that is true.
That is absolutely true.
Oh, and let's not forget the Orange Man Bad Hand Balm.
Oh, yes, we may as well run that one as well. Go ahead.
So you're going to love these guys. Orange Man Bad Hand Balm. You heard me correctly. If you love me or love to hate me, either way, this stuff is going to be a big addition to your daily routine. It's going to be huge. Believe me. Order now.
Oh, I've also got the Memory Rock here. Should we play the Memory Rock?
Oh, for God's sakes. Okay, yes, play the Memory Rock.
RPN has a great sponsor.
Do it.
I use it all the time. When I want to remember something, I just pick up the Memory Rock and bash my head with it. Then I can remember the rock thing, yeah, it works very well. I am proof of that. So order the rock memory thing right now.
think that a trip down memory lane with that was getting on to the actual topic. All right, the week before this happened for 401, we were actually covering the fact that the U.S. had moved in, like literally, like an entire fleet and a fighting division into the Middle East. And the week before, Israel had stepped up its attacks, including those exploding cell phones. I think it was exploding cell phones or something like that in
Pagers.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was pagers, Apple iPhones and the like, radios, pagers, cell phones.
Yeah, so they move it in, and here's the part that really gets me, and it kind of causes me to think that maybe this whole thing is like even the enemies of the United States are kind of tied in, like everyone's being coordinated from someone else. Now, if I was the president of Iran and I knew that there's going to be a potentially much more peaceful and agreeable settlement of the situation if Trump were elected as opposed to Biden, although I'm not entirely convinced that Trump is going to be an immediate solution, but that's neither here nor there. But if I knew that that a lot of what is going on in the U.S. is going to hinge on this next election, and I was going to get a much more agreeable settlement out of Trump, even though I am concerned with what's going on in Israel, the play would be to stand down and not launch a full-scale missile attack on Israel, which is exactly what happened.
On October 1st, Iran crossed a red line. Nearly 200 ballistic missiles rained down on Israel. This is not just an attack on Israel, it's an attack on global stability, a direct threat to every democratic nation. Iran leads the world's deadliest terrorist network. Their mission? Creating chaos. Israel has an obligation to defend its people, and it will, with full force. The world must unite. Stop Iran.
I mean, it runs counterintuitive to what you would think a head of state would do, especially like only a few, like, I mean, okay, maybe it was a response to the U.S. moving that fighting force into the Middle East like that. But I mean, the timing of that kind of makes me go, like strangely coincidental and not in a good way, especially given the fact that doing that right after that fighting force got dropped off in the Middle East is more than just a little bit provocative. Now, I remember hearing stories about potentially what was going to happen, and there was some speculation that this missile attack that Iran launched on Israel was going to be, quote unquote, the October surprise. And that doesn't really make any sense unless you go and you have to put on the tinfoil hat from Tinfoil Hats or Us, and you have to take a look at it from a conspiratorial point of view, and you realize that the only way it would make sense is if the Iranians were complicit with the Democrat Party or with globalists to do this, to create an emergency in the Middle East that would cause the election to be postponed. That's me speculating. Because, I mean, they're not going to... They've tried throwing Trump in jail. That didn't work. They've tried assassinating Trump twice. That didn't work. So now they're down to their last option. And the last option is to create an emergency large enough, which is, by the way, why I have the FEMA thing down there at number 7, large enough that they would have to postpone the elections. And one of the ways you would do it would be to start a war in the Middle East and force the U.S. to send troops over there, which is exactly what they would do. I would think more along the lines of having a major terrorist event over the next 3.5 weeks would probably in the U.S. would probably be a better idea. And keep in mind here, we're dealing with people that don't have any problems engaging in an act of mass murder to stay in power. So the only way this Iran thing makes any sense is if they're doing it to create an emergency situation in the U.S. Because, I mean, you know, like when you have an entire fleet of U.S. warships off your coast, that is not the best time to go, hey, I think this would be a great time to launch a large-scale missile attack on Israel. So that's where my mind is going on this. Now, I don't know what the casualties were in Israel, but it was a very large-scale missile attack, and it made a very tense situation even worse, and the timing of it is very suspicious. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, as far as the casualties were concerned, as far as I been informed, it was 0 casualties as far as Israel was concerned, and actually Iran actually had one of their own casualties in Israel. I don't know, this is I don't have to disagree with you on this sort of US point of view on this one. This is a long-running war or long-running conflict that's arguably it started in 1979 when both France, the UK, and the US under Jimmy Carter created a sort of Q sort of situation in Iran, and that allowed a Islamist theologic government to come in, and the very next day the government, the newly formed government, decided to make war on Israel and in turn most of the rest. I find it interesting that something that has to be considered is Iran as far as strategic opposition to Israel is concerned, is very poor. Sure, they aid and abet Hezbollah, which is the military wing, and Hamas, which is Palestine's military wing, which for most of us would be considered terrorist organizations. But yeah, they create poor. They are poor when it comes to strategy. And another thing that you've got to consider is that there's been a lot of disruption in Iran, and there has been sort of I don't know, a Cold War, a Cold Civil War happening in Iran for many years now, and it looks like the Iranian authorities could fall soon. And there's even talk about bringing in the Iranian monarch back into Iran. and we could see Iran become a democratic country in, let's say, the next year or so, potentially.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was pretty interesting. I'm not used to anybody like just stop talking like that, Mark. You gotta
Sorry.
like give some cues or something. You're like the most precise person I know. Okay, so I actually checked this out, and the ballistic missiles. There were 200 ballistic missiles, and none of them. Well, very few of them were able to actually hit anything. The IDF and the U.S. Knocked the majority of them down. There was no casualties on the Israeli side, but there was one Palestinian civilian who died in Jericho on the West Bank. So.
And also, I believe one Iranian in Israel. And also, there was a group of Iranians that were firing the missiles that became casualties because of proposed accidental firing.
Now, the reason why Iran actually fired those ballistic missiles, and nobody wants to ever report this, is because Israel on October the 1st assassinated a member of Hezbollah. Is a leader called Hassan Nasrallah, or however you say it. And I mean, for me, when it comes to this kind of stuff, that's just makes perfect sense, because that's the way it's always played out in the Middle East, where you kill one of our guys, we send a freaking an entire parade of missiles towards you. The only difference is now is we've got ground-to-air missiles that can knock them out of the air before they land, and that's basically the only difference. It's the same story all the way back to the 70s, like Mark was talking about, and the thing about Israel is they're real sneaky, Instead of freaking them going and doing an all-out assault on Iran first, they went and they committed an assassination, which their intentions was to shift the power in the region to where freaking the hostages that were taken to Gaza would be released and all that stuff would happen. But I don't think they expected Iran to step in like they did, and maybe that assassination did freaking hit Iran as hard as what they expected it to for everybody in Lebanon. Maybe it went farther, because I'm not going to lie. I mean, you can tell that Hezbollah and all them are supported by Iran. And there's a damn good chance that freaking they are behind a lot of the attacks that took place. But there's always a reason between these two factions, the reasons why they do this stuff. Like when it comes to these assassinations, I've always talked about the Mossad, and the Mossad, they were created as nothing but just a team of assassins. There was a list of Muslims that they had to kill, and they went down that list and they killed each of them. And that started during the Olympics back in the 70s, whenever freaking terrorists went in and murdered those Jews that were supposed to be a part of the Olympics that year. And from that day on, that's what it's always been about. It's been about retribution for Israel. They've actually killed people on accident in Europe, thinking that they were terrorists, when in reality they weren't. And that's documented facts. This is all the way up in Scandinavia, where one of the incidents happened. And they keep getting away with it, and they've gotten away with it for years and years and years. So there's no good guy and there's no bad guy in this conflict. That's the one thing that I have my feelings about, you know. Um, and this whole thing with the United States, what I find really curious on when it comes to the United States is like we end up having freaking the Democratic National Convention, and a bunch of liberals show up that were bussed in from other freaking states to protest against the freaking war in Israel. Okay, I find that pretty messed up that these people were freaking bussed in from different areas about a topic that absolutely has nothing to do with the U.S. government. You know what I mean? That's the one thing that I find really messed up, and I think that's something that I'd like to see taken care of here in the United States, to where people aren't being bussed in to protest against shit. You know what I mean? I think that's a bigger issue than what's going on in Israel. I guess you could call me an isolationist. I believe that the United States should be like it used to be. Stay the hell out of Europe's freaking conflicts. Stay the hell out of freaking Israel's conflicts. You know, you guys want to kill yourself over there in Europe. I don't care, dude. You know what I mean? When you come to our land and you step on our soil and come against us, then we need to freaking take action. Or if we know that it's coming. But other than that, I don't see any reason why we have to get involved with a lot of crap that's going on in other countries, because it's volatile as it is when it comes to everything on a world scale, and everybody's like, well, you know, you can't turn a blind eye and just ignore it. No, it's not about ignoring it. It's about freaking staying the hell out of it. You know, there's just way too much shit going on, and it's been going on in Europe freaking since the world started turning. You know, I mean, you can make list on top of list on how many wars came out of Europe, and it would just completely blow your mind. Okay, and then in the Middle East, it got so bad there that people don't even know what the real story is. You have to go in and research it. I mean, literally go to ancient history and research all the way up, and figure out what imams are and shit like that, you know. And it's crazy. It really is. So with that, I'll pass.
2 points on Roger before you finish. There's when I was growing up, when I was a kid, there was always this belief that the US was the world police. They were the sort of peacekeepers of the world. Obviously, that's never been true, but there was this belief. Also, when it comes to Israel, as there is a hardline Islamic view that the entire Middle East should be Muslim, and by extension, the entire world should be Islam. There's an interesting argument to say if Israel falls, then the rest, US, Europe, will be the next on the sort of hardline Islamic targets. But, yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I've actually checked into that, and if you take a look at the geography, about a third of Russia is Islamic. All of Mongolia is Islamic. It stretches all the way up into Turkey and into the southern part of Europe. I mean, there's more people in Europe that are Islamic than there are people who are freaking, well, other than Christian, that are any kind of religious belief. I mean, they're everywhere, and like they've been there. It's not like they've just started growing, you know. I mean, the fact that they've made it into freaking France and England is what's the big deal. You know, it's like a floodgate that's just opened up, and now people are recognizing it. But it's always been there, especially in Russia.
I'm glad you mentioned England and France, because we are traditionally Christian countries. So England's got the Church of England. Britain's got the Church of England, which is overseen by the monarch, and we are seeing, especially recently, with the issue of illegal migration, a lot people coming from the Middle East to this country, and there's an argument that Christian communities are growing smaller in this country, and Islamic communities are overtaking the Christian ethos in the UK. So yeah,
I agree. I'm going to go ahead and pass now because I really, you know, with these conversations, they're very touchy. They're touch and go. I like to have conversations like we just had right there, and like that is true what you said. It is happening, and there is no way of denying it. But there's also another side to that too, because that I mentioned it on the last episode. You know, there's a difference between conservative and National Socialist. And a lot of people get that mixed up. They don't understand what conservative is and National Socialism, you know. So that's all I got.
Okay, Henrik, you're up.
Oh, well, I suppose I can just stop donning this accent now, but we got the difference between the conservatives and the Übermenschen Hagendaschen irgendwelche Ernstmaschinen taken care of. That is very good to have such confusion out of the way. You know, maybe if we just let all of these third world countries, I don't know, butcher each other and pee on the bones of their children and all that, maybe we would actually have other things to do, you know. Maybe not be involved so much with that. But, you know, it is so profitable to do. As und meinen Freunden Klaus Schwab said, we were going to own you and violate your children for cocaine. You know, if we didn't try to divide and conquer, you know, we wouldn't be able to go let's and take all the children from Israel and Palestine and Lebanon and Ireland and land. You know, think of the children that you could sacrifice to Ultra McClaycock now. Come now. Surely you must be able to attack the Iranians because they make you angry for something. Maybe they put the peanut butter on the wrong side of the bread. You know, like Dr. Seuss. So surely there is reason to give us all those tasty children. Come now. Oh, they are going to argue with each other. They are next door neighbors. They hate each other. They want to eat each other's children like cannibals. Surely, you know, it is just another day in this world in which, you know, the greatest currency, it is not the gold, not the water, not the silver. It is the children. Like they said in the little gay cross community rights TV thing, we are coming for your children to teach them the tolerance and stuff, you know? Absolutely. Ignore the fact I'm choking on child bones right now. The FEMA is delicious. Was that good, or you want me to try and be serious?
No, standard. Oh, right. Dave, you're up.
Honestly, my whole stance is, and it always has been, if it's the Middle East fighting the Middle East, give them all fucking AKs and let them sort it out amongst themselves. They'll kill themselves off eventually.
And then we can have all the children.
All right. Is everybody done talking about the eating and raping of the children?
Oh my
Oh
God!
shit, he started.
It would shock me if this didn't get reported on YouTube. But I've only got 29 subs on YouTube, so I really don't care. It's only 4% of my total audience.
Be careful, dude. Kelso
so
just
this-
started with a German accent, so it's
So
on.
this is going to YouTube right now. You're saying? Well, if that's the case, I need to give the algorithm a few presents. Die, death, suicide, killed self, hate speech, vaccine, COVID, scamdemic. There you go. That should be more than enough to get your channel removed forever.
You forgot move the nuclear material into the city. You forgot about that one as well.
You forgot the G word too.
And we got to say Hitler and Jews in the same sentence because that'll upset the algorithm. Got to do that.
All you gotta do is say graphite, and it's over.
Hey, all we got to do is say. All we got to do is say cast the gikes, okay?
Cast the kites? Is that what she said? You say cast the kites, dude? Seriously? We're talking about Iran and Israel, and you have to say the word kite.
But anyway, in all seriousness, as far as the topic of the kikes versus the camel fuckers.
You mean Haji's, camel jockeys, tailhead, sand niggers, oh my.
Well, I mean, you have to understand. It was originally Islam that created the first condom from goat intestine. Although you have to understand, it was the British who refined the process by removing the intestine from the goat first. Now it hit them.
Well, welcome to Hamel's fresh, barely violated camels. We have good camels. They have lovely eyes for you.
Don't worry, people. We're not racist. We hate everybody. Like we don't like humans except for a select few. The difference is we're not trying to genocide all the people we don't like. But anyway, moving on. So with all that said, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that there really are multiple levels to this. We got to look at it rationally, just like there is in everything in life. All the way up at the very top, yes, Iran takes their marching orders from the same place that Russia and the United States and Canada and every other country in the world through the most totalitarian mechanism, as Mussolini stated, the melding of the corporations and the state, which has long since been done. We've got BlackRock, we've got Vanguard, we've got the WEF. Like, that ship has sailed. We got all that. But as true as all that is, they do compartmentalize. So at the very lowest levels, everybody thinks it's as real as a conservative who sucks on Trump's cock or a liberal who will suck on any cock whatsoever as long as it's available and it's not a racist cock. So you've got the highest levels, you've got the lowest levels, and everything in between. So, it's the very top levels. If someone on the lower levels, because they believe in a certain level of the game, because they've got the compartmentalized knowledge, so they don't realize how coordinated everything is at the top. Those underlings can act on their own and do silly shit that the top level doesn't know is going to happen. They don't know that's about to happen because someone on the lower level just suddenly decided to say, I'm mad right now. I'm going to go throw an SJW tantrum and fucking blow up children in the process, whatever, So they can't control. See, that's what I try to tell people. Like, You don't need a terrorist or a Jew or a federal agent or whoever hiding behind every bush, specifically manipulating every little thing. You just have different levels of awareness within the game, so to speak, and mechanisms that tries to keep everybody in their lanes, as it were. It's no more complicated than high school gossip. But the point is, just because things seem to have happened organically doesn't mean that they weren't actually issued from the very top, like what Naroki said. And also on the other side of the coin, like what Mark and Roger were talking about, yes, there are people on the lower levels that are in the game. They really think it is about race and religion and this and that, and they don't know anything about the upper echelons. So yeah, they're going to go do shit of their own accord without needing to be ordered by someone on high. They're a Jew, they're mad that day, they hate a Muslim, bang. They're a Muslim, they're mad that day, they hate a Jew, bang. Like this stuff happens without any orders from on high. But at the same time, orders do come down from on high, and specific things happen. And also, let's not forget that Hamas was a creation of Israel that was created by them, funded by them, and still is funded by them. You can even go back and look at mainstream articles saying the same thing from years back. Because when they were pretending to try the two-state solution that Israel never wanted, the person that was running against the the Hamas faction wanted peace, wanted two-state, wanted Jews and Muslims to get along. Well, if you're a globalist, that's bad news. Peace is bad for business. So they had their own little 2020 election way back, long before we experienced it, when they were trying to elect who's going to run Palestine and deal with things from the Gaza side. Israel made absolutely sure that Hamas got in. And, it's like, gee, if Hamas was just in so much control, then, they're in this big concentration camp, basically, open-air concentration camp. Israel controls if the water gets in or not, if there's power, whether or not there's so much as toilet paper. So it's like, wait a minute. It's just like the whole narrative doesn't even make sense when you look at who controls what, who's in charge of what. Like, admittedly, no conspiracy theories, just looking at the surface level logistics of things. And then, during the initial Hamas attack, there are people on the ground that survived, Jews, Israelis, who said, that wasn't Hamas, that was our own people. That was our own military shooting at us. Because most people don't realize that Israel has a policy of, if you've got hostages, it's better to kill them than to let them fall into the hands of the enemy. That's their official policy. So they got no problem with taking out their own people, civilian, military, or otherwise, in the name of, well, they shall not fall into enemy hands. If I cannot have them, no one can. And, when you look at all the reports coming out, there were people in the Israeli government that were saying, wait a minute, the breach that happened, hold on. Normally, all the sensors are up, all the guards are out, all the weapons are there, everything's fortified. But right in that tiny little time window where they came in, just suddenly, all that was disabled, all the personnel was gone. It's like they left the door wide open, And the only way that could happen is with inside of the Israeli government. Plus, let's not forget that Netanyahu is becoming increasingly unpopular, and the people are about to oust his ass. So to save his own ass, he needed his own little 9/11. That was Israel's 9/11, in my opinion. So he needed his own to take the heat off of his ass, so he could step up and go, oh, I'm here to defend Israel, so let's turn it into a parking lot in the name of peace. So war's a racket. It's always been. No war in history has ever been fought for the reasons they say. It's always just the rich assholes, well, the richest assholes, taking more and more and more. And in order to get people to fight each other, well, these assholes need to give them a reason that sounds logical enough, because your average person is not a psychopath. They don't wake up in the morning going, oh man, I wonder how many children I can murder today. The vast majority of people do not do this. They are not psychopaths. They are not sociopaths. So how do you get people who are not psychopaths and not sociopaths to go murder each other? Well, we see how. I don't think I need to answer that in detail, do I?
You will.
No, not this time. You guessed wrong.
Come on now.
Yep. So, yeah, problem, reaction, solution. That's all I'll say. It's an oldie but a goodie. Hegelian dialectics. So anyway, that's all I really have to say on it. So whether it's this Israel stuff or anything else going on in the world, yes, there is an overarching, coordinated marching in lockstep. We saw that with the COVID nonsense. Lockstep, everybody's on the same page. There is that top level of it. But there's also the lower levels where, no, not everybody's on the same page, and there's different levels of knowledge. And the people at the bottom, yeah, they can go do stuff independently, without receiving any marching orders from anyone on high. They're mad that day, they're going to go do something. Same thing here in the United States. You got some raging leftist mask-wearing fucking Karen that's on her 5th booster. She could just go raise all kinds of hell in Walmart or where the fuck ever just because she wants to, not because Klaus Schwab called her on a cell phone and said, hey, agent, you're being activated. You know what I mean? These people are already mentally fucking ill, and they're going to go do what they're going to do without needing to receive any marching orders whatsoever. So it's like all ends of the spectrum are true. But when people are thinking, oh, it's got to only be one or only the other, and if it's one, it can't be the other, people's minds are so narrow, and they need to realize that more than one thing can exist at once. It's not just black and white. It really isn't. And I'm done.
All right. Amen for that. Sorry, we got to keep it moving. So, Roger, if you have a comment, make it quick.
It's quick, but Dave reminded me of something too that was true. When it comes to this whole thing over in Europe about freaking immigration and freaking the Muslims and stuff, it reminds me how short-term people's memories are, because if you remember correctly, maybe about 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, there was a freaking protest that went down the streets of freaking in England, where the entire town had Muslims in it, and it caused freaking riots and everything over that. And, nobody seems to realize that this shit's been going on in England for over 20 years now, you know what I mean? They talk about just what's happening now, but this shit has been going on for decades, and all of a sudden now it's an epidemic, it's been there. It's just everybody keeps forgetting. It's one thing after another, so... With that, I'll shut up.
Okay, all right. So yeah, on to the part where Henrik's girlfriend and Roger get to comment. We've been dying to comment on this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the corporate section. Okay. Well, what really stood out to me when I saw this, it was like, wow. You know what? If Hooters is having a hard time, Pizza Hut, you kind of saw, because Pizza Hut chose to take a side. By the way, I can't believe we went 40 minutes on that Iran topic. When Pizza Hut, you kind of saw it coming. Pizza Hut had in the city that I live in, for instance, Pizza Hut had a shit ton of locations. And about a year ago, probably about half of them got shut down, which was funny because Pizza Hut was my personal favorite. Is still my personal favorite. Thank you very much for that, Hooters. I'm going to download 7 or 8 Hooters pictures instead of just my usual 6, because I'm just that kind of a guy, and the Red Pill Nation is just that kind of a show. So Pizza Hut had that Pizza Hut was in trouble. It was not that big of a surprise. Hooters, there's only two Hooters locations in Edmonton. One of them was at West Edmonton Mall, and the other one was somewhere downtown. And the one in West Edmonton Mall got shut down and moved further up the road, more towards Stony Plain Road, and the one downtown shut down. Now, I have gone into Hooters a couple of times. Their food was okay. I mean, I'm a bit of an introvert, and it's like the last thing I want when I'm eating is for some waitress in a tight shirt to come up to me and start socializing with me. Like, that's just not how I do things when I'm eating. I want to eat. I don't, or even say when if I go to a coffee shop, I just want to have my coffee. I want to chill out. I don't really want to socialize with anybody. Occasionally I will. So I generally found, at least in that particular, and that my one particular experience with Hooters, although I was with a group of people, I just found, it just like the vibe in that restaurant. I mean, the women look nice, and me, I'm a breast man, so boobies, Hooters, right? But I mean, it's sort of like it just really wasn't the atmosphere there, despite the nice two-legged scenery, really wasn't my vibe. So I never really ever went into Hooters very much. The whole situation, though, is that, I mean, if there's a restaurant that could get by, and by the way, there's a number of restaurants that, in fact, there was a feminist here in Edmonton at one point that actually started and made a big ass deal about what she called them was breastaurants, and what that term applies to is Earl's, Cactus Club. There's a few, they probably got a few versions of those down in the US as well. The servers are all young and pretty, and they wear tight-fitting clothes. And I mean, sometimes the food is pretty good, sometimes it's not. But I mean, their big selling point is usually, and Hooters falls into that category as well, except that they're a little bit more blatant about it, and in your face, kind of like the selling point are the hot chicks. And it can be something of a decent selling point, but I mean, my personal opinion on Hooters is that it's like, if that format should work on paper, as long as the service is decent and the food is good, you should be okay. Like, if you're starting to, like, I mean, this is not anything new. There have been a lot of restaurant chains that have been closing up shop in the last few years. But the quote-unquote restaurants have not really been hit all that hard until now. And again, a lot of it is, and again, I don't work in the restaurant business, but I do know that the food prices and the supply lines and that sort of thing, that restaurants are much more vulnerable. Hold on a second. Sorry, my throat was getting scratchy again. That type of restaurant, like, restaurants are a lot more vulnerable to that. But I mean, again, right, I guess it's going to call them restaurants. Much like this, and Hooters definitely falls into that category. They haven't been hit as bad because they had the testosterone factor working for them. They had the hot chicks working as servers and bartenders working for them. If places like, say, Hooters and what I thought was a fairly brisk restaurant chain like Pizza Hut not doing particularly well and having to shut down locations, that's not a particularly good sign. Now, the second topic on this is Netflix. Now, I have covered, thank you very much for those photos, Roger. The Netflix well, what can I say about Netflix? I mean, they, you know, they allowed a semi-pornographic movie about preteens called Cuties to run on its show. And by the way, I will point out something. The killing blow for me wanting to do anything in Hollywood was when the Sundance Film Festival actually, and I'm not kidding about this. The Sundance Film Festival gave an award for the Cuties movie. And they did promote Cuties quite a bit until it became a negative backlash, and then they tried to bury the content. But they would allow a movie like Cuties to run, but they refused to put Sound of Freedom on their platform. Like, you cannot find Sound of Freedom on Netflix at all. So, and Netflix is that like a lot of the corporations that work inside Hollywood. Netflix has got a habit of being woke, and again, right, this is one of the reasons why the internet is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, is because you're seeing a lot more politicized and propaganda content, not just on the news, but also in entertainment, aka cultural Marxism. And Netflix, instead of staying unbiased, they decided to take a stand on the election and endorse Harris. And as a result, the cancellations rose for Netflix rose by about 300%. And again, Netflix is a corporation that doesn't have a moral high ground to stand on. Like, none. And I suspect there's going to be a lot more corporation stuff as I go along, but that is it for now. I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay, I'm not familiar with Hooters. In fact, I've just did a quick search and found out that according to the Independent UK newspaper, there's only 3 Hooters in the UK. There's a two-folded issue here. First of all, it's the entire, well, not only Hooters, but all these other corporations. There's the concept of the so-called woke phenomena, either pro or against woke, which can be divisive, or which is divisive, and obviously irrelevant of which side these corporations stand on, they're going to piss off potential customers. But also there's the other issue of that we are going through an severe economic situations at the moment, the so-called cost of living crisis, in which people are seeing prices rise and are deciding to, in the case of restaurants, deciding to eat at home because it's just cheaper. People can't afford to go out these days. I saw a documentary just a couple of days ago in which explained the cost of the average cost of McDonald's, which was something like $15 compared to a couple of years ago, where you could get a so-called McDonald's meal for about $1 or $2. So yeah, people are not being able to afford to go out anymore, and not being able to afford to the increased prices in their entertainment. So yeah, there's knock-on effects there. Yeah.
Okay, Roger, you're up.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting that Mark brought in the whole thing about the fast food industry and stuff like that, because other than the fact that I think Hooters is cool because there's a lot of boobs there, and like I love you to death, Naroki. You're probably the only guy who says that he gets disgusted with seeing boobs exposed in front of him while he's eating chicken. I think that's so sexy, dude. I really do. Like, but you know, to each their own, you know. But when it comes to like Hooters and going in and eating their food, what their food is just nothing but fast food, basically. I mean, it's fried food. It's they like to upscale it. They'll throw it in more grease and shit like that. It makes it even more unhealthy. So you're slowly killing yourself so you can go in there and watch boobs and stuff. So that's basically my take on it. And you know, the thing about this whole woke thing that really amazes me is like they've turned cannibal on their own. Like if you sit and you listen to them, like they've got different degrees of feminism now, and like now these new versions of feminists that are out there, they're actually freaking talking shit on like people like Jane Fonda. And the reason why they're doing that is because Jane Fonda said that it was okay to freaking show your sexuality. And, you know, I agree with that. I mean, the older ways, whenever women were talking about that, you know, and you take a look at the differences between the 1970s and now, you can't tell me there isn't a big difference. You know, women were very, they were a lot more comfortable with their sexuality back then, and even into like the 90s and stuff. You know, big women freaking were okay with it to a certain extent. I remember Nell Harper, you know, you could have her, she was on television and she had no problem with dancing and freaking showing her body off. And now today it's like almost a sin, you know, for a woman to actually feel proud of their body and try to show it off. They have to somehow hide it and pretend like freaking it's bad, or shun the fact that you're able to show yourself, you know. And then like the whole relationship between a man and a woman, the whole natural process is just missing. You know what I mean? There's absolutely to a natural extent, there is nothing wrong with a man freaking looking at a woman. You know what I mean? I don't think that they should stalk them, you know, or anything of that nature. It's not. I'm not suggesting that you go out and stalk a woman because you think she's good looking, you know. But there is nothing wrong with girl watching. You know what I mean? That's what they used to call it. You know, they used to call it girl watching. You just sit out on a bench and you watch hot chicks go by. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like with women, women should be able to do that too. I'm finding it funny that a lot of these feminists are freaking slut shaming more than what men are in today's world. They're going to colleges and they're telling people that freaking that women in the porn industry are freaking making them look bad, you know. And then they're trying to clump the porn industry with freaking sex slaves, you know. And the thing with me about sex slaves is this is a very serious issue where women are being abducted and they're being freaking forced into a lifestyle that's just horrible. Okay. They're now here in the United States, they're clumping prostitution up with sex slave trades. They're clumping pornography up with it. All these things so that they can pass laws that are stricter on people who are into prostitution and into pornography. That's the one thing that really sticks out to me that's going on here in the United States. And for me, it's all political based, you know, and that's how I see it. So, and don't get me wrong, sex slavery is a serious issue and it needs to be dealt with, but it needs to be, they need to make sure that they're not exploiting it for their own chances of going into areas that really isn't sex slavery. And I'm not saying that all pornography doesn't have sex slaves in it. So there's some of them that do, but there's a lot of them that don't. There's a lot of women in the porn industry who's actually made a lot of money from doing it, and they have no problem with it. And they've been doing it for years. So that's all I have on the subject.
I'm just going to add a few things to that. I make a distinction between fast food and restaurants. I don't consider McDonald's or Pizza King restaurants. They are fast food outlets. Much like if as a Brit, go down to my fish and chip shop, that's a fast food outlet. There was a distinction there. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to throw in one quick thing here.
Sorry, I thought I was me with
Sorry, I just want to throw in one quick thing, and then you can have at her. I have had actually interviewed a porn star at one point in this show, and I've talked to a few of them that work in the industry. The number of safeguards that the women have in that industry is absolutely their pride. Of course, they have this bad habit of picking real damn meathead boyfriends, which I've heard some stories about that. But I mean, in general, they have some of the most protected women out there. We're talking about the mainstream porn. We're talking about places like Brazzers and Naughty America and that type of thing, and the kind of contracts they have to sign. So yeah, that is. That's a whole ball of work. That's a whole can of worms. Trying to get somebody from the industry to actually talk about the industry is very difficult, though. Okay, now we can let Henrik's girlfriend have at her. So have at her.
Okay, when I spoke to him and he told me Hooters was shutting down, my first thought was when it's not just the prices, it's also, I want to say, is that men in this day and age aren't looking for fast women. And by that, I mean, they're looking for women they can have a long-term relationship with. I want to say men are sick of dating. They're kind of sick of the whole, you've also got a lot of men going mad.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely. As a member of the manosphere, this is maybe not the number one topic that's discussed in the manosphere, because there's various factions inside the manosphere, but it's in general, the caliber of most women in the last few years has really dropped off. And it's getting married, it's like if you get a marriage that works, it's like you won the lottery. But I mean, it's like for a lot of guys it doesn't work. But if you have anything else to say, go ahead, say it. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's like you've also got men who are MAGTOW, men going their own way, and that they don't want to exactly feel like, going into a Hooters, spending $16 for a 4-piece wing set, which is what we experienced when we were traveling. We were hungry as fuck. We stopped by a Hooters and we looked at their menu briefly. Now, keep in mind, this is maybe a Friday, Saturday night. They're packed because, it's rush hour, it's dinner, it's the weekend. We look at a menu. We were both broke and we were looking for something cheap to eat. And the cheapest thing they had, and I'm not joking, that would have been mildly filling, was a 4-piece wing set for $16 to $17. If I'm going into a restaurant and, I want to get something to eat, I'm not spending that much. I'll go to Wingstop for that cheap. And the other thing is that it's not, Henrik's gone to Hooters when he was an adolescent boy.
My mother wanted to make sure that the chemicals in the water were not turning me gay. Do you understand me? It's that real masculine foodstuffs. You need the bosoms to squeeze
and not get a felony
to make you a real man without spending $9,000 on your chicken and inflation Kamala prices.
Hooters food is turning the frogs gay.
You're not paying for the chicken. Trust me, you're not paying for the chicken.
Yeah.
You know what you're paying for when you go to Hooters, dude. You're not paying for the food.
Dad, you know I'm
to strategically target the sexualized food market by putting the fluoride on the salt and a couple other combination of chemicals into your water to make you tag each other's buttholes to spread the AIDS. So all the pools will be closed and Hooters shall falter, for the men shall be chasing armors instead of good priced wings. Oh no, did it die?
You're there. You're still
I,
there.
I was just going to point out there is a cultural difference between the US and Europe. In the US, because there's a lot of tipping culture, these restaurants want to get as many people into their establishments as possible. So there's a fast in out sort of culture. I mean, how many times do you go into a restaurant and have a finish your meal and have a long conversation afterwards? I
have
doubt.
to say, that's actually quite common for me and Henrik. Like, we'll be sitting there and our food will have been done. We'll be sitting there chatting for like 30 to 45 minutes and then we pay the bill and we leave.
They have to throw us out.
Typically, yeah. Like, you know, they'll keep going by and asking us for this, that, and the third. And it's like, okay, you guys want us out of here. I get it. We'll go.
They're tired of giving out the free coffee because, like, on most diners, like, you get free coffee when you buy your first cup. And that's what I did. I'd always go in, dude, and I'd just drink the shit out of their coffee. I'd stay there for like 3 hours talking to people. And that's a good restaurant. You know what I mean? And finally, they get tired of your ass sitting around. They ask you if you can please leave, you know what I mean? Because you're drinking all their coffee. That's an American restaurant, you know?
They don't make the coffee like they used to, brother. It's not strong enough to peel the paint, let alone the hairs off my testicles.
but that's what I remember when it comes to American restaurants, you know what I mean? And like what you're getting now is just like a cheap, watered down version of what these restaurants used to be. They were actually pretty good back in the day. Now they're just shit.
There's another point I just want to consider. You were talking about feminism and the concept of third-wave feminism. The point of third-wave feminism is all about you've got choice. As long as you go by the choices that we decide. With second and first wave feminism, it was just about choice. With third wave feminism, it's a choice, but determined by a loud minority.
Definitely by a loud minority. I mean, I have no issues if a woman decides that she wants to work at Hooters, but like, if you're going to work at Hooters, I would expect you to not have a good track record when it comes to relationships. You know, if you're working at a restaurant where you're flaunting your body, that doesn't exactly speak well of, oh, you know, my relationships are good or decent. I have a good husband at home, you know, doesn't exactly confidence make, if I'm being completely honest.
It's like OnlyFans with food and beer, brother, and maybe a functional TV if you're lucky.
And you know, another thing too that I got to point out, like in Arizona, in Phoenix, they have a barber shop where women will cut your hair in lingerie.
In lingerie?
In lingerie. They will cut your hair in lingerie, and it's right in downtown Phoenix, Arizona.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
That does.
Yeah, I mean that Phoenix is where all the cool shit happens, though, because like if you do research on Phoenix, they have that, and then they got the Mason Jar, which is like one of the coolest freaking places when it comes to rock bands. And stories come out of that place like you wouldn't believe. It's just amazing. Phoenix is awesome.
I wouldn't be able to stand being in Phoenix just because I can't stand the heat. We've been living here without any AC for the entirety of summer. I've mostly been a puddle on the floor.
Anybody else got anything?
I know Dave's got something. Dave,
Yeah,
Dave,
well,
come on, Dave. Dave Kelso.
Oh, I'm actually starting to get tired, but I've been enjoying listening.
Oh, come on, man. We know you got some good bits there on the nipples.
Okay, well, I mean, I need you to stick around for FEMA. So if we're not done on this topic, we're going to move on with the next one because the next one is really interesting. Now, Professor Allan Lichtman had this record of predicting the elections, and he had only been wrong on one of them. And they made the mainstream media made a big deal about having Professor Allan Lichtman come on their show to give his prediction about who was going to win the 2024 election. And the way he said it and the way he came across, it was like, oh, and we're going to have our first black female president. And it was like he's really enthusiastic about it when he says that it was going to be Harris, right? And it all sounded really fake and really contrived. And it sent some alarm signals through the Republican community. And it just sounded off. That because what ended up happening is that when Allan Lichtman made this prediction, he was just a little bit too enthusiastic about his prediction, which set off alarm bells because like unbiased academics can kind of smell intellectual bullshit. So what they did is they went in and they looked at Allan Lichtman's data. And it turns out that Mr. Allan Lichtman, and this should come as no surprise, and I was wondering, I hope Allan Lichtman got well paid for his interpretation of his data, because what ended up happening is that the way Mr. Lichtman interpreted his data, he took some liberties, would probably be the best way to describe it, because he has a series of questions that he asks. And a presidential candidate, in order to win, has to win solidly on a series of questions, 6 of 11. And the way he interpreted the data, Kamala Harris went ahead on 7 of them. But when other academics started looking at his data points, now I don't remember the specific all of them, but when they looked at them and they reinterpreted them according to what was actually happening, it appeared that Allan Lichtman had interpreted the data quite literally, liberally. The two that specifically that Lichtman was really caught with his pants down on was which president had a major scandal. And Lichtman decided that January 6th counted for Trump, which technically it does. But for some strange reason, he decided in his brain that the debacle in Afghanistan for Biden didn't count because Harris wasn't the president when it happened. Therefore, the Afghanistan debacle was not her fault. That was one. The other one is who has more charisma, Trump or Harris? Yeah, try not to laugh. Like, seriously, try not to laugh. Like, I mean, how could you not pick Trump over Harris for who has more charisma? And
Harris has more sex drive, not charisma. People should stop getting the two confused.
Yeah. So it was like his interpretation was, well, Trump has half the nation against him, therefore Harris has more charisma. Now, there were a few other ones in there that weren't quite as egregious, but those were the two that were the most egregious. And when you looked at Lichtman's questions and you reinterpreted the data, at least according to what actually happened, well, one of the big things that Lichtman did is that all of the faux pas that Biden had done in his administration didn't apply to Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris wasn't the president. Therefore, on certain questions, and I can't specifically remember all of them, they went to Kamala Harris because Trump had these marks against him, but Harris didn't because Harris wasn't the president. So what happened is Mr. Lichtman took some interpretive liberties with his data, was based upon his overly enthusiastic response when he went on mainstream media to announce this, which is what set everybody off in the first place. And Lichtman's prediction fell apart upon scrutiny. I mean, yeah, okay, Harris got a little bit of a tiny boost out of this, but again, right, you see this, and this is something that I've actually had to deal with in the past few months here, where you start talking about bot science, right? And this was a prime example of bot science and bot research. The pharmaceutical companies engage in it all the time. Allan Lichtman got called on it, and when it turned out that you looked at his data, actually according to what actually should have been interpreted, Trump is going to win. Now, I'm not saying that as a Trump enthusiast, but again, right, very clear that Lichtman engaged in bot science, and if he hadn't had been turned into such a stooge and a simp for Harris when he made this announcement, it probably might have worked, but it didn't. And everybody looked at his data and it's like, yeah, you fucking lied. Like, you took liberties with the information you had and you interpreted it differently because your excuse for most of these questions was that, well, Harris wasn't the president. Therefore, what happened with such and such and such doesn't apply to Harris, but it does to Trump. So Harris got the votes, got the nod in these areas, which is not against the law, but is definitely skivvy science. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
I did catch a glimpse of the story. I don't know. It's the old hearts and minds sort of thing. Obviously, nobody knows who's going to win the elections. It's not over into the fat lady scenes, sort of thing. But again, it's just about narratives and who can shout the loudest, who's more believable. Yeah, I can't really say very much about this, but anything in the media has got one form of bias or another. There's very little of this, very few as a very sort of limited sort of aspect in sort of fair and non-partisan, non-biased journalism these days. So yeah, it goes back to doing your own research and making up your own mind at the end of the day.
That it?
Yeah. Well, I can't really say very much about this because, again, being in the UK, just I've got very limited interest in the more minutiae of the US elections, so I can't really comment that much.
Okay, Roger, you're up.
But don't you like the shit show between clowns, potatoes, and camels? I mean, it's more entertaining than Rowan Atkinson. No, that's a lie. Rowan Atkinson's far more entertaining.
Yeah, it's just the old bread and circuses sort of thing. It's all just bread and circuses. Today's news is to most chip paper.
See, that's American right there. What you just said is an American type of idea. Like, you've been desensitized to American politics to the point where you become an American yourself. It's like America from what's the name of that German band where they spell America with a K.
Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
Ramstein.
Yeah. Ramstein, okay. If you sit and you watch that video, it makes perfect sense to you. You know, little kids in African tribes are sitting and watching a black and white TV and eating a Whopper, or a freaking guy in India who's supposed to be a hardcore Buddhist is eating a Whopper and freaking smoking a cigarette. You know,
I've always been fairly critical about the sort of US culture being so widespread, especially in the UK, especially where I was growing up, and even more so now.
In fairness, that's not the real American culture. That's the Western fucking globalist consumerist bullshit that's superimposed and virtue signaled as Americanism. I'd say that real Americanism looks closer to what we refer to as voluntarism these days, because it was all about personal responsibility and stepping up and unity in the community. Whereas now it's all about bow, obey, do as you're told, and try not to think too much. Oh, and here's Netflix. Have fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, like that's what it always appeared to me, like when it comes to that. And like with Kamala Harrison, the first thing I have to say, and I've been saying it, I've said it on this show even back whenever even before when what's his face freaking bowed out of the presidential election. I was really confused.
Pronounced Chlamydia Harris wrong, just so you know.
Well, I was suspicious about the whole situation about Biden being freaking senile and everything, because it just didn't fit right. And then the assassination attempt happened, so things got a little confusing. It didn't make sense to me until just about maybe a week and a half before the DNC had their freaking setup going. And it dawned on me that the Democratic Party was able to freaking scam the entire Democratic Party so that freaking they could push their nominee in without having a primary election before the freaking main elections took place. And that's what took place. They literally robbed their own freaking party of their right to freaking choose who they wanted to run as president for their party. And this has been going on for a while now. When you look back and you look at Bernie Sanders in Las Vegas, okay, Hillary Clinton literally robbed him of his votes, and they were point blank busted for freaking cheating him on the elections when it came to that. And you know what he did? He bowed down, shut his mouth, and gave his supporters money to freaking the Democratic Party. And most of that money came from the Green Party here in the United States, and that pissed a lot of people off. And now that's exactly what they're doing here with Kamala, or Chlamydia, I believe is what Dave said her name is. She's
yes, Chlamydia Harris, the venereal disease that infects the brain and turns it to rot.
And when it comes to like the political party, they're doing the same thing with her, like what this dude right here had done with Hillary Clinton. The Democratic Party has this idea that freaking they know what the future is going to bring, because like with Hillary, people don't understand what Trump really was. He was like the sucker punch, you know. He was the freaking wild card that came out of nowhere and just freaking punched Hillary Clinton right in the freaking stomach, you know.
Well, if you look closer, Trump kind of does appear to be controlled, but at the same time, you can't have a narrative where there's two bad guys and no good guy. It doesn't work. It's not believable.
He wasn't even expected whenever he was running the first time. Like, and they didn't.
He's a wild card.
They didn't expect him to win, and Hillary Clinton even had like that glass ceiling bullshit going on. Like on her freaking winning, they were going to have it to where the glass roof exploded. You know what I mean? And that was supposed to be her freaking acceptance speech. You know, that's how bad the Democrats are. They think that they know everything and they have it all figured out before the elections actually happen.
Hey, you know what? The conservatives are the lesser evil, but I like to say, how about we just have no evils whatsoever and just have unity in the community and have people take personal responsibility and starting at the smallest levels of the grassroots and working your way up, just mostly peacefully, just fixing the problems ourselves. But too many people live vicariously through their cell phone and don't give a fuck. So that's why they got to suffer before they want to do those sorts of things and coming together. Everything's got to be enough of a shit show that it affects them personally and they're suffering. And if they survive it, they go, "Oh my God, Joy Pang Pang should have bought one. What happened?" So they need the bitch slap.
And I also think that we need to go back to what was unique here in the United States, even with England and Canada and all that. We need to go back to the rights of the individual. And I'm talking about the way that the Constitution of the United States describes the right of the individual. You know,
you ever watch those old black and white documentaries, short ones from just after World War II, where they talk about individual rights and they're like, the way of the community will go the way of the individuals, and the way of the nation will go the way of the communities. The change actually comes from the bottom up, not the top down. But when people believe it comes from the top down, then the bottom just obeys the top, and then it works its way back up again.
Exactly.
So it's like a parasitic infection.
Yeah, I agree with you.
There's this oversimplification of the sort of good and bad. I find the so-called black hat and white hat cowboys. Trump bad. Harris and Clinton good. If I'm not mistaken,
people need to go look into Operation Trust.
If I'm not mistaken, during the 2016 elections, Hillary Clinton did get a lot of, was mainly just supported by the larger cities, and she did not get at all that much support from the smaller towns. There's the sort of who can shout loudest sort of concept going on here.
With Trump, I said it in Roki's last show that we were on, where I think there's something new going on in the Republican Party, and it seems like these. And I could be wrong about saying freaking the poor people, because it's more than just that. It's freaking people who aren't into the freaking conservative money making party. You know what I mean? Those people are freaking going out. They're dying off in the Republican Party, and it's not about freaking making money and creating corporations to these people. They're more of like the Tea Party alignment, and people who call themselves libertarians that are actually Tea Party members. You know what I mean? But are too ashamed to admit it. That's what the Republican Party is turning into, which is a good thing, which means they're having their own growth spurt. They're becoming more than what they actually were before, because the neoconservatives, first of all, here in the United States are evil to the core, okay? I personally feel that they were responsible for assassinating JFK, you know. I also believe that freaking President President Bush Sr. was also involved in it. There's a lot of evidence backing it up, and to this day, people ignore it like it didn't happen. Like it's not true, it's a conspiracy. But there's a lot of facts that people don't want to look at when it comes to the actual story behind it. The fact that his father was the one who started the CIA, and that their whole family was involved in the Secret Service.
People just want to believe what they just want to believe. Again, until they suffer and their mind cracks open. But until then, they don't want to make waves. They don't want to rock the boat. They just want to be comfortable, and they just want to believe what they want to believe.
But I do believe there are a lot of interesting changes going on within the Republican Party. And I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent, and I want to stay that way. So that's all I got.
I just don't vote because I don't support organized crime. Very simple for me.
Henrik, do you have anything to add?
Oh, wow, that was a long wait. But no, I get you guys. Voting, not voting, all that. Dave and I have had that talk a long time before.
My right.
Yes, and I will also have a lawyer because I want to audit my shit to make sure some Juan Jose Jalapeno on the stick didn't fucking steal it, or Hillary Clinton, or the 8,000 dead people that shot themselves in the testicle on the southwest side of Chicago,
Or here in Gary.
or the 2 that died of AIDS in a pool trying to blow each other. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to reserve my right to vote. As far as Lichtman and Anushagen, deciding that, yes, my word is God, I am God, lick mine ads, she shall win. The queen shall slayeth, and ye shall reapeth my books like Al Gore, Noam Chomsky, and that other fat bastard. What was his name? Michael Moore? Probably should have wrote it, too, It seems like every other dirtbag you come into, oh, I'm a doctor. Oh, can you deal with my gunshot wound? No, I wrote books. That doesn't help my gunshot wound.
And when I wasn't writing books, I was raping children.
You're damn right on that.
I love how your German accent just comes sliding off your tongue naturally. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't even have to sit and freaking rehearse it. It just comes rolling out. That is so cool, dude. That really is.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I do have to say that. That's cool.
There's no party like a Nazi party. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Because the one thing I like to do beyond fornicating with children is the stealing of the science. Yes. You're going to believe what we tell you to believe, and that is that the queen shall slay, your testicles shall be the sacrifice, and Trumpenmann shall lose, because I say so. Now, I have a PhD, so go buy my silly little book and use it to worship me like God.
That duck is a squirrel, because I say so. I am the science. Now suck the cock of the science.
Yeah, the science is never wrong. Yes, the goat is a squirrel now. Everything is this squirrel. Your shoes are the squirrel. Your underpants are the squirrel. The mail in your letterbox is also squirrels. The squirrels are everywhere. Run around naked now and get arrested.
So running around naked only happens after the 5th booster.
Yes, because I also wrote a book about that. Yes, they call this the expansioning pack of the cabinets. Yes.
This reminds me of something that I want to bring up to Mark, too. He always talks about this whenever we talk. Now, I want to mention something about sex when it comes to the United States versus sex in Europe, okay? Now, these guys are talking German, so let's talk about Benny Hill first. Then we need to talk about Germans and sex. Then we need to talk about frickin' what was that old frickin' TV series that was out where frickin' the guy was a maintenance man. He was going around fixing people's. He is on the. In England, you guys used to have guys that would ride around on bicycles and frickin' fix stuff. It was there was a old comedy show where that was what it was about, and he used to do series kind of like Benny Hills did. Now
it was Batman. That was what it was. It was Batman.
but there was plenty of English and European freaking sex references going on, dude. So just remember that, especially with Benny Hills. That was the no-no show here in the United States. We couldn't
Yeah,
even
but
watch it if we were kids.
we were talking about the 1970s.
The
We're
good
in
old
a
days.
totally different era now. Completely different
The
era.
good old days, you know. You guys are the ones who started the whole deal. Like, you guys
Oh,
were
yes. You had the cocaine, less with the marijuana, and you went to Stockfield. That things, you know, with the hippies, they get together and they have all the orgies with the LSD where the man plays the silly little guitar. Yeah, Stockfield. You know what I mean. Yeah, you got arrested there and enjoyed your time in prison as Fleece Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything more to add? Kelso, can we move on to you got anything to say, Kurt? Can we move on to the last topic?
I think my intermittent discussion with everybody else's intermittent discussions have sufficed just fine.
All right, so last topic. And this one, hopefully we won't be going on. Hopefully we won't be hitting 3 hours and 40 minutes or whatever. Because I gotta be somewhere at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. This one just absolutely left me gobsmacked. This one just absolutely blew my mind when they did this. Because I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on around the hurricane that hit North Carolina that is just in the realm of speculation. Kelso talked about the weaponizing of the weather, which I thought was probably a more appropriate topic for this topic. But one thing that, and of course, there's been much like the same thing when that hurricane, I can't remember what the name of that hurricane was, that hit New Orleans all those years ago. With the number of cluster fucks.
Katrina,
yeah. Well,
because they says the lie.
Yeah, the number of cluster fucks that have occurred around this particular hurricane, including FEMA's total and absolute mismanagement of the problem and not allowing private people to come in and help and all of those things. And of course, you know, there's situations where emergency services drop the ball. FEMA somehow said they were literally on the record of saying that they were prepared to handle hurricane emergencies this year, and then literally the head of FEMA comes in and announces here just a week ago that they ran out of money and they can't handle another hurricane. And of course, here comes Milton slamming into the west coast of Florida. Among the other things, though, and this is the one that absolutely left me gobsmacked, because there's an actual recording of top FEMA officials doing this. Top FEMA officials having a discussion about how to practice DEI in an emergency. Like, really stupid, pointless discussions like, is somebody going to freak out if we don't use their proper pronouns in an emergency situation? Because black people are disproportionately held back. They're going to somehow, apparently, you know, when a hurricane hits a house, apparently the houses that are owned by white people remain standing. Well, the houses by black people and Hispanics and anybody who's not white, all miraculously don't all get torn down. But the old houses that are owned
hey,
by whites,
look at those blizzards, man. If that doesn't say white power, I don't know what does. Nature's fucking racist.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, this was actually a serious discussion. Like they actually had a serious discussion about this. Then, of course, there was the
I
relief.
know. I've seen the video on it. Actually, it was very cringe.
Yeah, it was like, why are you even discussing that? Like, why is that even relevant? And then, of course, you had the fact that there was just like these little pittance of relief money sent to the people in here in Carolina, but they somehow had several $billions available to help out the situation that was going on in the Middle East. And all of the cartoons that came up around that particular issue, some of which I'm going to have to find and save and use on the slideshow. And of course, when it was very clear that the current administration had dropped the ball, they tried to roll out Project 2025 again, which is just basically a Democrat AstroTurf program, which they have not bothered to ever come out and openly get public about. Because if they tried to get openly public about Project 2025, they get absolutely destroyed. But what they literally tried to do is they went in and they said, well, no, if the Republicans hadn't voted against the aid package we had for FEMA, this wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, there's a lot of politicking and gaming and all that sort of thing around this issue. And but the one that really stands out to me, though, and Dave Kelso was talking about that, was that video where you had FEMA officials talking about incredibly stupid stuff like transgender bathrooms and pronouns in a rescue situation. That just absolutely left me like, if that's not a facepalm situation, I don't know what is. And of course, it's really interesting trying to see this current administration once again trying to deflect the blame away. And of course, this is all like, again, right? It's been trying to keep the election coverage down to a minimum on this show because I want some other stuff to get discussed other than the election. But it's very, very difficult to not notice how FEMA, once again, just like they did with Katrina, which was the last major hurricane that hit, dropped the ball epically again. And they didn't just drop the ball this time. They did it in such a way that it was like, oh, so houses that are owned by white or that get hit by a hurricane deserve less money than houses that were owned by blacks. Like that type of a discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Okay. When it comes to these emergencies, money can be found. Simply, money can be found. Sure, these agencies have got budgets, and the old argument is if you don't spend your budget, you lose it. But when it comes to these things, money can be found, irrelevant of how much it's going to cost. The entire DEI argument, I find the entire argument to be ridiculous. Let's not forget DEI, diversity, i.e. diversity of arbitrary sort of notions, so skin color, race, religion and stuff, but never diversity of thoughts, diversity of views, diversity of opinion, equality, the old socialist thing of equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity, and inclusion, well, inclusion for some people, but not for others. I don't know. FEMA, the entire FEMA and DEI, then it's just a symptom of a bigger issue, really. It's just a symptom of the bigger sort of DEI discussion. And, well, what can I say, really?
That it?
Yeah, well, where else
Okay,
can I
Roger,
talk
you're up.
about, really?
Well, right now, there's a couple that me and Mark both know that's down there, and there's a few other ones. But Nancy Planetta is down there right now going through this with her old man, Rafael Martinez, and they're both on Cafe Enigma, and they've been dealing with it, and she's been kind of keeping everybody updated on what's going on there. And what you said actually is happening, but there's also a lot of other things. Like she's going in and she's trying to organize the relief and everything for the local supporters, people who are donating locally. And one thing that she mentioned was the fact that during all this stuff going on, too, the longshoremen decided to take advantage of a freaking bad situation and go on strike so that they can get freaking a raise, that's something that's pretty messed up. During the middle of a disaster, they decided to take advantage of it, this union, so that they can get freaking pay increases and shit. And you'll see that kind of stuff happening a lot. That's the one reason why I don't really agree with a lot of people supporting these unions and stuff of that nature. It's like with the semis, they did the same thing with the train systems here in the United States. They were big on all that. So that's why I really don't.
Yeah, so I was going to say we saw something similar with the train system in the UK, or train companies and unions in the UK just recently.
They take advantage of a crisis situation so that they can profit off of it, And the thing that she was telling us too was, what they're seeing down there is that FEMA is sitting in their little air-conditioned hotel rooms and trailers, fretting about volunteer donations and funding because they don't control it. You know what I mean? That's the thing that really annoys them the most. Now they're trying to prevent local freaking volunteers from actually helping. You know what I mean? Because they don't control the money. If you want to donate to help out with the freaking victims of this, you have to freaking send your money to FEMA is what they're arguing about, And that's something that I find that's pretty disgusting. When I read that, I thought that was bad. And she's down there right now. She lives there in Florida, and she's helping out with volunteering and everything. And she said that it's getting pretty bad down there when it comes to FEMA. I never did like FEMA in the first place because I live here in the Midwest, and Dave lives here too, and he can tell you if he knows much about it. But like FEMA will not freaking give any kind of donations if your town doesn't reach a certain population limit. You know what I mean? If it's a small community, then that's where freaking you have to rely on the local help. And the state emergency response and everything like that to help. FEMA will not help you because your population is smaller than what they will give for donations. So I don't respect them whatsoever. I've sat and I've seen so far since I've lived here back in my hometown here. I've seen at least 5 small towns freaking just completely get decimated because of freaking, tornadoes. And they literally would not raise a finger. People have lost their homes and they wouldn't raise a finger simply because they didn't have a population that was above a certain quota, So that's something that really got on my nerves about it. With that, I'll pass.
Henrik.
All right, well, let's see here. Federal Enema Management Anus. What does that spell? I don't think it's really helping anyone unless they need to get some Laxatives? I mean, come on, seriously here. When the hell has the government not screwed something up? Has anyone else other than me watched the X-Files? I mean, seriously here. Oh, where?
What is it you were going on by your
Prices go to waste, yes. The Raumführer and manual, yes. May all of Zionistic Obermenschen of Israel be upon him, and all others who question must die in the anal-raping gulags of Evanston,
Hey, everybody
Illinois.
remember that one time when government came in and solved all the problems and everyone was happy? Yeah, me neither.
What did Reagan reminds me of the Reagan statement? The word,
I already know what you're talking about. He said the most dangerous words
Yeah.
in the English language are "I am from the government and I am here to help."
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, let's see here.
Folk in Appalachia can take care of themselves. Obviously, you get them the stuff they need to rebuild, they'll do it.
Yep.
A single doubt in my mind, they can't. I mean, they live with all that crazy shit down there. I have a shadow of a doubt that if you gave them the shit necessary, they can do it themselves.
Yep. Duct tape, 2x4s, and moonshine can totally fix everything. No government needed. Government, get the hell back to where you belong in the raping child dungeons of Germany or some crap.
Well, you know that like the Florida Indians were freaking like cannibals and shit, right? Like that's why they killed Ponce de Leon. They ended up freaking trying to chase him down and eat him, and he made it to his ship, and they shot him with a poisonous arrow as he was getting into his boat. True, that's
And
fact.
is that where the man of Florida Man legend comes from? Cool.
Yep.
Sounds like an unkillable monster fan.
The Spanish were settling Cuba, and they were sending exploration boats out to freaking explore the rest of the area, and all of the ones that went north just would come up missing. And they didn't understand what was happening, so eventually they found out that these ships were making it up to Florida, and they were freaking being killed by cannibal tribes and eaten because they felt that they could gain power from freaking eating the body of a freaking a white man because they've never seen a white man before. You know what I mean?
District 9 had that same premises in it, to where they had the Africans eating the aliens because they thought that they would magically be able to pilot the shrimp max.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I guess that reminds me of the old inside joke that some of us know and some of us don't. Why did Fence Witch end up on Section 8? She got kicked out of District 9.
That's fucked up, man. That's just low.
Yes.
Hiroki, I guarantee you love us tonight, don't you?
Yeah, well, I gotta be somewhere at 8:00 tomorrow. This morning, and we're at 3 minutes to 1:00, and we're not done yet, and we're well past 3 hours here. But again, I gotta figured with these topics we would. Kelso, do you have anything more to say on this one? Because we need to wrap this up.
And for the first time ever, it's not my fault that this happened. Yeah, I mean, nothing more than I've already said. Just be mindful and don't fall for the hyperbole, but don't fall for these aren't the droids you're looking for, move along either. Just calm down and be rational. Look at all the evidence. Don't get emotionally triggered by any of it. And pan the gold out of the mud. Don't look at the mud and say, oh, there's no gold here because I see mud. And don't look at a nugget of gold and think you've hit a gold mine either. You know, be rational, be calm. Don't jump the shark. Don't crank it up to 11. And don't go full retard. Because never go full retard.
I kind of like going full retard, though. That's fun. Dude, that's fucking fun. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's okay to go full retard, but just be choicy.
You own nothing and give your anus. The government is there to save you from yourself. You know nothing.
Eat the bugs and get the chitin parasites in you, and die because you will own nothing and be happy because the dead can't be sad. Get your 10th booster.
Canadian cannibalism is cool.
As cool as being a psychopath. Just ask Hillary Clinton, the coolest woman on earth.
You got that right.
Okay, well, I mean, we actually will be talking about the Joker on the next show. Just giving you a heads up, because I saw I went to see the movie last night. Yeah, I won't get into too much detail about it. I will save it for probably next Friday. But unless anybody else has anything more to say, this is it for tonight. Yeah, the whole thing with FEMA was just wow.
Everything you've just heard has been brought to you by Pfizer, because everything has been brought to you by Pfizer.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, so any parting comments other than that? I'm just gonna call it a night because we're well past 3 hours now, and I was kind of expecting we might go past 3 hours tonight.
Just a little something for the algorithm. Sig Heil the COVID Reich.
And remember that we love you, Naroki, no matter what we say. We love you, man. Just keep coming back and remember. Just remember, one day at a time, dude. One day at a time.
Exactly, and just remember one thing, one issue.
Taking chlamydia.
Oh my God! Don't even go there, man. Ugh.
Chlamydia the cat.
I joined the Manister to avoid issues like that. I went MGTOW to avoid issues like that. Yes, that's right. I'm a MGTOW, long, loud, and proud to be a MGTOW too. By the way, just remember our statement on the caliber of the Red Pill Nation. We got one standard, and that is no standard. And I think Mark found that out the rather entertaining way today. You better get used to it, Mark, if you're going to be on the show.
Yeah, this is actually this is actually like the better. No, actually, no, it's not, because we got both Glenn and freaking Dave in here. You know, these two are wild, man. You can, but like,
well, we're like Rowan Atkinson if Rowan Atkinson didn't have a British accent.
No, I mean, it was. If you think these two are entertaining. Nihilist, when he was actually sane, was actually like pretty. Had some very entertaining things to say as well. I kind of miss him sometimes, and then what I don't miss are the personality conflicts. But anyway,
yeah, because what ended up happening is it got to a point where you have to ask Nihilist, show me on this doll where the Jew hurt you. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. All right. So that is it for tonight, folks. Just remember, I will see you on 403. Which is, strangely enough, that is the area code for Southern Alberta, but not the area code for the part of the province of Alberta that I live in. And I will be back in camp for that one, so I won't be pressured to have to get. I can stay up until I don't have to be at work until 9 o'clock the next morning, which is this one, which is the first aid course, which starts at 8, which kind of shocked me. But that is it for tonight. Thanks for everybody for showing up.